Okay. All right. I'm sorry. I was muted myself. So, okay. We're having a little technical problem. So I was trying to get him into a call. We finally got him in a call. He's actually in the Discord call now. So I'm going to add his video in. You guys should be able to hear me, and you should be able to hear him in just 1 second here. So give me 30 seconds. Say, hey, you know what? I ain't got a producer for this stuff. You know what? Bulletinder's busy guy. He only does Caffeine Corner for me nowadays. But anyways, to let you guys know, I have X from the ACA, Atheist Community of Austin, Street Epistemology Discord, who wanted to talk a little bit about street epistemology and run some on me at the same time, maybe kind of run some on him. And we were talking a little bit about agnostic atheism and some of the issues that are with it, considering that it's basically a nonsensical phrase, at least in the weak case of atheism. And we were going to talk a little bit about epistemology and how it juxtaposes with ontology. And so we were having a really good dialogue over in the Atheist Community Austin server, and we decided to take it over to mine. And I was going to go live anyway, so this kind of worked out quite well. I was actually going to go live about a half hour ago. So I thought we were going to have a little discussion on this and maybe kind of explain to people, once again, the issues with agnostic atheism, and then see if X concurs in some ways. Let me introduce you, X, real quick. And while you introduce yourself, I'm going to try to get your video on here. So, hey, what's up? Okay, let me see if I can. Let me see. How am I going to do? I don't even know how I'm going to do this. I'll just do this display capture, I guess. That might be just easier. Okay, so you said before to me when you were over in the ACA that you're an agnostic atheist, and then I'd asked you what you kind of meant by that. So I'm going to do the kind of the same approach here. So when you say the phrase agnostic atheist, what do you want to convey by that? And get closer to your phone if you can, because it's really hard to hear you. And I got you at 200%. Okay, they can't hear you. Wait 1 sec. They can't hear you real quick. So again, let me I apologize. There we go. That's fixed. All right. Go ahead. No, so when you say agnostic atheist, you mean by what?
I don't believe in a God, but I'm open to there being a God. But as of right now, I'm not convinced that there is one.
Okay, so let's kind of parse that out a little bit, because the ability to change one's mind is a virtue. It's considered in what's called virtue epistemology to be open-minded, right? If somebody is closed-minded, they're in transit. They're not going to be able to change their position, even given evidence, and that's pretty much not a virtue, right? That's pretty much what we don't want in people, to say that, hey, look, I'm so, convinced of my position, and things that they probably cannot have any kind of real certainty about, that they don't ever want to try to even change a position, right? So be open-minded is virtuous, but it's independent of the ontological question of God's existing, right? So when you say agnostic atheist, one, I don't know how anybody could have in any way, shape, or form read into that where you're talking about virtue epistemology, right? And so it's not conveying that to anybody. Would you agree on that?
You're saying that I'm not convincing anybody?
No, what I'm saying is that when you say
what I'm saying,
I said when you say you're open, okay, like somebody asked what virtue epistemology is. It's very much like virtue ethics, right? Virtue ethics deals with characters, right? One's character, what you should do.
What does virtue mean?
Virtue is virtue is something we should strive to that's been between two vices. Okay, it's an Aristotelian type approach to ethics, saying that if I want to be a virtuous person, if I want to strive to do what is right, then I want to strive, for example, like honesty. Honesty falls between dishonesty and brute honesty, right? You don't want to be dishonest. You want to lie all the time, and you don't want to be so brute honest where you hurt people's feelings. There's a happy middle ground called the Archimedean mean. And so that Aristotelian mean. So the Aristotelian mean, the golden average between those two, is where you want to strive for virtue. And so virtue epistemology is very similar. Some of the intellectual traits we look for are things like open-mindedness, right? Having a rational discourse, being intellectually honest with your interlocutor, right? These are principles that you have in a discussion that you want to strive for to have a better dialogue, right?
Okay.
Okay, so when you say that you're open-minded, that's just pretty well normative, I think, right? I mean, most people don't go into discussion saying, I'm so closed-minded, I don't want to have a conversation. So when you say agnostic atheist, what do those words mean to you, and why do you juxtapose them together? I know we have a little bit of hum and a little echo. I can't get rid of that. That's because he's on his phone.
Well, I am not convinced that there is a God, and I'm open to evidence to tell me that there is a God.
Okay, but I'm asking you what agnostic atheist means, right? I mean, sure, that's fine that you say that, but it has nothing to do with agnostic atheism. What do you, when you say agnostic and when you say atheist and you put them together, what is that supposed to convey to somebody? Like when I hear agnostic atheism, everything you just said isn't what it tells me.
So the first part, agnostic, means I don't know, right? Can we agree on that?
In this particular case, the way you're using it, let's work with that. Okay.
And atheism means I don't believe in a God.
Okay. So you're using it to mean epistemological proposition that the knowability to gods, juxtaposed with ontology, meaning that you don't have a position on God existing. Now, let me tell you the problem with that and why it's nonsensical.
Okay.
Knowledge is a subset of belief. Do you agree with that? In order to have knowledge,
Yes.
you need to have belief. Okay.
Yes,
If you don't have
I do agree with
belief,
that.
right? If you say, I don't believe, how then can you modify it with some kind of epistemic or knowledge quantifier or modifier? Either one. I mean, you have to say, I believe, and I also know, or I believe, but I don't know. But you can't say, I don't believe, and then have some knowledge juxtaposed with it. That's a nonsensical terminology, right? Because you have to have belief before you're going to do anything with knowledge. So saying that I don't know and I don't believe, it's nonsensical, but two, it's somewhat superfluous as well, because if you don't believe, you clearly can't have knowledge, right? I mean, because if knowledge is a subset of belief, you have to believe first. By telling somebody I don't believe, you're already telling them that you don't have a knowledge position, right? So why would you throw in? If you're in your uses of these terms, you would just say I'm atheist. Why throw in agnostic? It doesn't change anything.
Yes. I do not believe, and I do not know. Yeah, that's exactly the point.
Yeah. So you're just saying in this particular case, you're just saying you're
Yeah.
atheist, as the ACA would use that term.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. So you
I
do
don't
you agree
believe,
that
I don't claim to know.
Right. But do you agree
Yeah,
that the term
it's
agnostic atheist is
superfluous,
just
yes.
superfluous? Okay. Or not? It's
Yes,
nonsensical
it is
mostly,
definitely
but
superfluous.
Okay. I think we're on the same page there. All right. So I talked to you earlier, and you were saying that you don't have a position on the proposition. You don't believe gods exist, and you don't believe they don't exist, right?
Correct.
Okay. And you agreed that that was the agnostic position, generally speaking, agnostic on P, right?
Yeah, I mean, colloquially, yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it colloquially.
Yeah.
It's actually philosophically, but sure. By the way, my personal, and I'm not going to die on this hill, but all cards on the table, I'm not convinced that the colloquial version of these terms are what people say they are. I think that the philosophical usages and the colloquial are synonymous. But again, I'm not going to die on that hill. But I just in my readings, I don't see them saying this. The term colloquial doesn't necessarily mean what they think it means, right? It just means the most common. But I think the most common is the philosophical terminology. It's not the most common found in the ACA, right? So colloquial doesn't necessarily mean most general. It doesn't mean like sensu lato per se. What it means is the most ubiquitously used, right? The most common used in general parlance. And I think that atheism, the most commonly used, is the way the philosophical terminology uses it as the actual belief that God does not exist. But again, not a hill I'm willing to die on. All right, so when we go back to like your position of agnostic atheism, would you think it just muddies the water by using that phraseology rather than just saying, look, I'm an atheist, and then someone can ask you, well, what do you mean by atheist?
Yes. Yeah, I would definitely think that there's a huge muddying of the waters when it comes to the word atheism.
Okay, and why is that? And I apologize for the audio. This is the best we're going to get. His mic is one of those lapel mics. It's okay. It's okay.
Trying to.
Yeah. Those mics are horrible, by the way. That's good. It's fine. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it. Like when you think of the word antisocial or asocial, that's one of my biggest pet peeves is when somebody says, "Oh, they're antisocial." But what they actually mean is asocial.
Why would you say that? Because these are borderline what's called these are called etymological fallacies. The term atheist, right? From atheos, the letter A means not, as a negation. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now etymologically it came from without, but it actually means logically not, right?
Yes.
So if you say atheist, right, it is talking about the propositional content that is negated. Okay, and let me run that by you real quick. If the proposition, and just for simplicity's sake, they usually just say God exists. Now, you can get into A theory of time, B theory of time, past tense, whatever. It doesn't really matter whether you're talking about theism or classical theism. We'll keep it simple. The proposition is to make it a God or gods exist. Okay, so when I say God, I mean gods or any kind of supernatural deification of some being. Very simple. Would you agree with that? Make it just for arguendo. Just arguendo.
That a God exists? No.
No. The proposition. Let's just make the proposition God exists. Something very simple. Okay. So,
I mean, hypothetically. No, I mean I wouldn't agree with that, but
no, right. No, I wouldn't expect you to. But this is, like I said, the proposition is God exists. You're going to say that proposition. You don't agree with that proposition. You don't think it's true, right?
Correct.
Okay. What is the negation of that proposition?
Oh, I know this. It's like my.
The simplest way to do it is to say it is not the case.
Hold on a second. Hold on a second. You got the negation of that is that no God exists.
Yes. Okay. And again, the simplest way to negate is just to put it is not the case, right? So God exists. Yes. So the negation is it is not the case that God exists or gods don't exist, right?
Correct. So
yes,
it's the negation.
It's negation of the proposition. So atheism. Yes. Is the negation of the proposition in this context. So if you believe the proposition is true, you're a theist, believes God exists, right? Mm-hmm. What happens if you believe the negation? It believes gods do not exist. Atheism is the belief that God does not exist, right? Think of the predicate. The predication is belief, right? And the proposition is God exists, and then you have the negation of that. You have it is not the case that God exists. I believe it is not the case that God exists. If you're indexical, right? If you're saying that it's me that's holding the belief. This is why in philosophy, atheism is normatively used as the belief that God does not exist, because it logically works out that way. Which, by the way, the ACA probably never told you that, right?
No, I've never heard that.
Yeah. Some atheists still haven't after all these years. I mean, it's weird because it's ubiquitous anywhere you look. If you look at Stanford, Oxford, Cambridge, I've got dozens of paper by Morris, by Jackson, by Smart, by Draper, by Oppie. They all use it this way. It's just common. But the ACA doesn't use that term, which is fine. I mean, I'm not saying they can't use the terminology the way they use it, but I'm saying is if you use it that way, let's talk about it, or let me explain how it's used, generally speaking, in philosophy, and then we can kind of compare and contrast. Good. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, that's a really good point. But why do other people not acknowledge that?
Because they've been indoctrinated not to. Simple as that. It's dogma. It's evangelistic atheism that prevents people from understanding these types of concepts. They don't want to, even though the evidence is. They can go read Stanford Encyclopedia. They can use Internet Encyclopedia. They go read Oxford Handbook of Atheism. They can read Cambridge Encyclopedia of Philosophy. They can use again a ton of papers that are out there that will say that atheism simpliciter, they'll call it, or simple atheism, is the belief that God does not exist, or the negation of the proposition, right? Cambridge specifically says it's the view that gods don't exist. Internet Encyclopedia says it's the view that gods don't exist. And ACA can use any uses that they want, but there's some issues that come along with it, which we'll probably not have time to get into. But I just wanted to tell you, what it is in the philosophical uses of these terms, and then figure out your position, right? Because straight epistemology is figuring out your position, right?
Well, to me, straight epistemology is just the Socratic method.
Right. I mean, open. Okay. So what do you consider the sort of
trying to learn here? I'm trying to learn here from you. So
sure.
To me,
and vice versa.
Epistemology is questioning people and leading them towards a conclusion rather than telling them that their conclusion is wrong.
Okay. That's kind of what straight epistemology is. I'll grant that. It's a dialectical synthesis, right? You're trying to reach a particular conclusion formed between two people having open-ended questions with each other as much as possible, right? I mean, you're probing to try to find reasons to have a person try to justify their particular beliefs and see if they have adequate justification to withhold judgment or to have a particular belief one way or another, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and
correct.
Do you do the straight epistemology?
I do not. I want to. However, I haven't.
Okay. Are you on the straight epistemology Discord?
Yes.
Oh, by the way, do you know Christy
Megan
Santiago?
Yes.
She says hi. Hey, it's X. So she must know you.
No, I don't know. I don't know her.
How could you not know Christy Santiago? She's like the greatest human on the planet. She's from the League of Extraordinary Atheists and Humanists.
I don't know.
Yeah. You're missing out, man. Dan. You're missing out. She was actually a guest
I don't know.
the other day. Okay, so I've been kind of questioning you on your beliefs, just kind of suss it out, and I think maybe now realize that maybe your position before was a little bit less tenable.
Yeah.
Than it is now.
I just am wondering what the point of all this is. We're arguing semantics.
Well, no, actually, it's not semantics. That's not what semantics is, right? Arguing semantics would be saying like, all Steves are dogs. Steve is a dog, therefore I'm a dog. Okay, well, if you make a logical case like that, that's a semantic argument. Saying that you're equating something. If I just say a dog now means Steve, Steve's a dog. Okay, that's semantic.
Syllogisms.
That's a syllogism, right? But these are not semantic arguments. What I'm explaining to you is these arguments, how they exist in the academic literature, how they exist in philosophy, and the problems existing with it logically and rationally. Because if you want to go back to like the whole not believing in God stuff, right? You recognize now that you not believing either way is agnosticism basically in philosophy, or being agnostic on P at least, right? Agnostic on the proposition. But there are issues with that, right? If by holding just to atheism, and I can kind of tell you why if you want. It doesn't take very long, but it's kind of complicated in a little bit. It's up to you.
Oh, shit, man, your show.
Okay, we'll try. It's not that complicated.
I'm here to learn.
All right, so I have an argument that I've written.
Talk as much as you want.
And the argument that I wrote is basically saying that atheists are guilty of special pleading fallacy if they don't allow a theist to say that weak theism is theism. And this is the atheist I'm referring to as the ACA type atheist. And let me explain to you why. I'll walk you through it so the outside audience can kind of go with it too. So if it is the case that in philosophy atheism is the belief that God does not exist, we'll call weak atheism the position that you just don't affirm that. You don't affirm theism. Okay, so anybody who doesn't say gods exist, anybody who doesn't hold that belief, and I'm making this very simple because there's much more complexity to these things, but because I think there's non-cognitive approaches to theism as well, just more than just believing the proposition or not. But if I say God exists as a proposition and you don't affirm it, you say, look, I don't believe that, you're going to put that under atheism, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Or actually, no, you've corrected me. So, yes, I'm atheistic. Correct.
Okay. So you're an atheist because you don't believe gods exist, right?
Correct.
Okay. And by the way, I don't use that terminology. We're going to be doing an internal critique, right? We're in your system here, which is fine. Okay. In the external system, though, they call that weak atheism, right? You've heard that term?
I have heard it. Yes.
It just means somebody who doesn't believe that gods exist. That's all.
Yes.
Okay.
Versus strong atheism, which means that you believe that no God exists.
Correct. Absolutely. Okay, so we're on the same page. So back to an internal critique, and I hate switching back between internal and external, but sometimes you have to. So you are a weak atheist, and you're just going to call that atheist, right? Make sense?
Correct.
Awesome.
Sure.
Now, let's say hypothetically I'm a theist. Excuse me, and I say the proposition of atheism is that there are no gods. If you don't affirm that, you are now a weak theist because you haven't affirmed the negation. If you're a weak theist...
Wait. Hold on one second. Mm-hmm. My microphone kind of cut out.
No worries.
Can you repeat yourself
Sure.
real quick?
Theism being the proposition God exists, right? And we agreed that the negation of that is that it is not the case that God exists, or for simplicity, God does not exist. That would be the atheist proposition, right? That'd be the proposition there are no gods in the strong case, as you would say. A theist could then say,
why are we arguing hypotheticals?
Because I'm showing the argument because this is an argument for special pleading, and I'm explaining to you why atheists are guilty of special pleading in this case if they don't allow.
Okay.
Because you're also a theist now at the same time. You are an atheist and you're a theist using your vernacular. And I'm explaining to you why. If you don't affirm the proposition of atheism as false, a theist can say, well, you're not affirming it. You're a weak theist, and I'm just going to call a weak theist a theist. So if you're going to be talking about the weak case, atheism, Gnosticism, and theism are all the same term. You're all the above, and it leads to confusion, and I think possible category errors. But it leads to a lot of epistemic confusion because when you're dealing with negative cases, it leads to absurdities like that. You are, terminologically speaking, an atheist, an agnostic, and a theist all at the same time by using these what's called lackadaisical terminology, or sensu lato is the Latin term for it, in the broad general sense, rather than sensu stricto or sensu strictissimo, which is like in the very narrow sense. And you see the argument there that why a theist would say you're a theist because you don't affirm the proposition of atheism?
It kind of seems like semantics to me.
It's sort of, this actually somewhat is semantical. I'm not going to deny it's not semantical, but it's also logical at the same time, right? This is semantic argument. Yes, I do grant that. But in this particular semantic argument, it is a valid semantic argument because it deals with a logical fallacy, which is special pleading, right? Special pleading is where you have a set of something and you remove something from that set with no justification to do so. And so, if I was a theist, I can say, well, X, you're a theist, and he would say, why am I a theist? I'm like, because you don't affirm there are no gods. It's just like an atheist would say, you're an atheist because you don't affirm that there are gods. It's a mirroring, right? It's actually just taking this position and mirroring it here. And I have a whole formal proof on this, by the way, too. It's not just, that simple. I have an actual blog with a proof that is that long that just shows this is the logical case. But does it make sense, though, why a theist could just say, well, if you're a lack-of-belief atheist, you're also a lack-of-belief theist, which means you're a theist. Now, not many theists will because, again, there's more to theism than just merely the belief that God exists. If you look at what's called the non-cognitive parts of theism, right? There's the cognitive part that deals with the proposition, saying that the proposition is either true or false, but I also believe that there are non-cognitive components to theism, right? Which, for example, like believing in God as in having faith in God rather than believing in the existence of God, right? So when somebody says, I believe in God, they're either saying that they believe he exists or they're having faith in him, right? It could be used either way. That non-cognitive type aspect of I have faith in God would be a different proposition altogether, right? But so theism to a theist, to a Christian, they're taking that term belief in God to mean multiple different things, right? So if you're talking to a Christian, you have to be very aware of how they're using these words to describe their position in what's called classical theism, right? I don't know if you talk to Christians, they differentiate between classical and non-classical theism.
Yeah, I mean, I've grown up in a Christian environment. But the thing is that they're all biblical. So there's not really any sort of conversation with them.
Can you put your mic closer? Sorry.
Yeah, I've grown up with biblical Christians,
Mm-hmm.
so there's not really any sort of argument or conversation.
Well, okay, so most Christians tend to they tend to classical theism, which is some of the canonical aspects of God, right? The omni qualities, omnibenevolence, omnipotent, omnipotent, all loving. I mean, so there's different attributes that are assigned. But in classical theism, anybody who doesn't affirm a personalized God would be considered to be a non-theist, right? A deist would be considered to be a non-theist, even though a deist believes in God. I don't subscribe to the classical theism approach in the philosophical terms. It doesn't mean I can't work within that framework. It's just that when I'm using the term theist, I'm referring to a non-classical theist, somebody who just believes a God exists of some type, right? It is a person who believes Zeus exists in my schema is a theist, right? And that's, I think, it's most common, but not always. You have to really read. You have to look what you're reading. Some papers will be in the classical theist sense, and so as long as they differentiate, that's fine. But most theists I've run into, they're typical classical theists, right? They wouldn't consider somebody who believes Zeus to be a theist in the same way that they're a theist, right? Because they don't have theism implies a personalized God. Deist does not. Does that kind of make sense so far? I mean,
yeah. I mean, yeah. The deist believes that God has he's been here, he's done that, he's moved on.
Yeah. So I asked you in the Discord, why haven't you been convinced that there are no gods? Right? What is the reason why you're withholding judgment? What is your justification for being agnostic on the proposition? Because any position requires a burden of proof. Just another argument that I have. Weak atheism still requires a burden of proof, meaning that if you have unbelief, if you don't believe the proposition, there is a burden of proof attached to that for rationality. This is Epistemology 101. This goes back to Sextus Empiricus way back in the 2nd and 3rd century. This is not that contentious in philosophy. It is in the atheist community of Austin, because they're like, oh, Steve's an idiot. You don't have to have a burden of proof for not believing. Yeah, you do. The reason being is that is to be a rational position, it needs to be justified, right? It requires justification for rationality. And I'll give you the example, X. If I say I exist, and you say, Steve, I don't believe that you exist, do you think I'm going to hold you as a rational person?
No.
Right. Because it's just, in our society, it seems irrational to say, well, I'm talking to you, but you don't exist, right? You might think that person might have some mental dysfunction or limitations in mental capacity,
or other things, yeah.
Right. And so is an ingredient for rationality. And if I say, well, X, why don't you believe that I exist? At least then it gives you the opportunity to explain to me why you don't think that I exist, right? Those are your justifications and your justificatory conditions for holding to the proposition that not holding to the proposition that I exist. In other words, suspending judgment on it or just withholding affirmation. So when I say, why don't you believe that I exist? I'm asking you for your burden of proof, right? And you just say, well, I don't believe that you exist, Steve, because, I think that you're a computer simulation and blah, blah, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be a rational justification. It could be irrational, and I still think you're an irrational person. But I'm still asking you for what your burden of proof is, right? So weak atheism requires a burden of proof.
It's called the null hypothesis.
It's not, though.
Believe things.
Why is it the null? Why do you consider it the null? I'm curious.
You don't believe things.
Why is that a null? A null is because a null is something you try to reject in an experiment, right?
Yeah. Okay. I don't just believe things just because someone told me.
Sure. But a null hypothesis is something that you try to reject when you're doing an experiment, right? So if I say it is more likely the case that this is
not it. No, that's not it at all. The null hypothesis is I'm not going to believe it until I have evidence for it.
That's not what a null hypothesis is. Let me tell you what a null hypothesis is. When you're doing an experiment, right, what you're trying to do is you're trying to demonstrate your experiment is more likely the case versus what's called the null, or the null explanation. And you have to be able to,
I'm not going to believe it unless it's...
Well, hang on. That's not a belief claim. This is science. We're going to move from... We're going to move into science right now. Experimental science.
Okay, go ahead.
And so you're given what's called a p-value. Okay, you have what's called a significant alpha and a p-value. You have to reach a certain amount of probability, a confidence level, based upon these conditions, under I think it's 0.05 for most commonly, to reject the null, to say that it is the case, it is more likely that this is the explanation versus the null hypothesis. Okay, and that you try to avoid what's called type 1 and type 2 errors. If I remember correctly, type 1 error is where you fail to reject the null hypothesis properly, and a type 2 error is where you reject the null improperly. Although I sometimes get those reversed, so don't quote me on those. It's been a long time since I did type 1 and 2 errors. But both of them are basically the same thing. You didn't properly demonstrate that your hypothesis was the case. So the null hypothesis is what you're trying to demonstrate is the least likely of the two hypotheses. You want to be able to reject it and say that's not the case. So when you hear the term failed to reject the null, that means that you didn't demonstrate your hypothesis is the most likely the case in experimental science. So the null hypothesis is the competing hypothesis to your conjecture for your experiment. Have you ever heard that before?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I have.
Okay. So how does that relate to just weak atheism? I mean, a child, a baby that has not even evaluated the proposition doesn't have a null hypothesis. It is innocent of the proposition, as Graham Oppie would say. Right?
Are you saying that a baby doesn't have a null hypothesis?
Yeah, baby has no position on the proposition. It has nothing to reject or not. It's unaware of the proposition. Graham Oppie in Atheism and Agnosticism, basically, he calls the position to be innocent on the proposition because they are unaware of the proposition. Richard Dawkins agrees that you shouldn't call babies atheists because they have not evaluated the proposition to be even one way or another. And it's indoctrination to call a baby an atheist just as much as it is to call him a Catholic. I happen to agree with Dawkins on that, and I don't agree with Dawkins on much.
But does the baby agree?
How would the baby agree or not disagree? The baby has no mental states on that particular proposition.
Yes, exactly. The baby does not agree.
Right. So it's a theist then, right? Because it doesn't agree that the gods don't exist, as we said earlier. If you don't agree that gods don't exist, you're a weak theist.
Atheist,
if you're weak,
you mean, right?
So the baby's an atheist and a theist at the same time. Does that make sense?
No. The baby does not agree. Because it does not agree that a God exists.
Right, but it doesn't agree that no gods exist. Therefore, it's a theist using the same type of terminological approach. Or else you're guilty of special pleading.
Yes, it does not have an opinion on it.
Right, which means it's innocent on the proposition. It's neither a theist nor an atheist.
well, shit.
By the way, I was going to have Undo moderate this, and he's probably sitting in the live chat going, thank Jesus Christ Almighty that I'm not moderating this, because I have no idea what the fuck is going on. I know how Undoom thinks. He's like, yeah, I don't want to get involved in this.
Oh, my phone's about.
As your phone's about to die? It's probably your video. I'm going to jump down out of the video call, and I'm going to go down to the actual Discord, members only. All right, so I'm going to jump out of the video call there, and maybe he can follow me down. Let me see here. Let me message him. Go to members only. All right, so come on into the Discord if you guys want to add on this. Let's see what you guys think. And well, I think his video was getting overworked because of his phone, because he had the video on. So let's see if I can get him to go to just the voice chat, and then you guys can start coming in here and let me know what you think so far. I didn't mean to be talking more than him. It's just his audio was so bad, and it's breaking up, and it's hard to hear him. But anyways, let me give you guys the link to join. Copy. So Undoomed, if you want to pop in, I know you're lurking out there somewhere. You got nothing else to do. You're in quarantine. Yeah, by the way, fun fact, I guess Undoom's now going to be a social justice warrior, and he's converted to Islam. Very proud of you. Mecca's that way. Do it 5 times a day, and you should be fine. So Scuba Steve's out there. Scuba Steve actually said something that was interesting. He said, Scuba Steve hypothesis, I don't believe something until it's proven true. And by the way, I had somebody actually say that to me the other day, and this was in the ACA Facebook page, and I don't think they said demonstrated true rather than proven. That's not as bad, but it's still pretty bad. And I tried to get them to understand the problem with that sentence. And let me run it by you guys. Well, we'll see if we can get him in here. If his phone starts working again. If I say I'm going to withhold affirmation, now the word he used was reject. The problem with that is reject means accept negation, right? But let's just forget about that. Let's just say I'm going to withhold affirmation until something is demonstrated to be true. Let me show you guys the problem with saying that. Again, these are just idioms that atheists throw out, right? But there's some huge problems with that. And Doom, come into the Discord, man. I just gave the link. You got, like I said, you got nothing better to do. You're isolated, dude. So when somebody says I'm going to withhold affirmation until it's demonstrated to be true, I asked him, well, how could you accept that induction is going to work tomorrow if you cannot demonstrate that induction is going to work tomorrow? I believe induction is going to work tomorrow, right? Am I justified for that belief? No, it is an unjustifiable, unwarrantable, irrational position, right? It's not irrational, but it's not rational either. It's irrational. So I cannot demonstrate that induction is going to work tomorrow. There's no possible way. It's in the future, right? I can't even justify the belief for it, because in order to do that, I have to use induction to justify induction, which is clearly circular. So I asked him, I'm saying, well, if you can't demonstrate to me or to yourself that induction will work tomorrow, under your idiom, you have to withhold affirmation that it will work tomorrow. And he wasn't grasping that. He's like, well, I've already justified it myself. Well, how do you justify to yourself? You just said you have to demonstrate it. How do you demonstrate a future event? You can't. So I think when all these atheists throw out these epistemological phrases, they're not thinking very clearly what the hell they're saying. Like if I said, I'm not going to believe something until it's proven true, which is like logical positivism. Well, what's actually proven true? Mathematics. Okay, sure. I believe that the square root of -2 is irrational. Why? It's been proven, right? I believe that 0.99 I'm repeating equals 1. Why? Because it's provable, right? It's been proven. I could do it in algebra. I can do it in calculus. But not everything is provable, right? There are some things, many ontological things are not provable. But I still believe them, right? So withholding affirmation and not believing something merely because it hasn't been proven is nonsensical to me. It's irrational to me, right? I can't prove that external minds exist, but I believe it. I can't prove that reality is external to the mind, but I believe it. I can't prove that aliens exist or life outside of the earth exists, but I believe it. I can't prove that the Riemann hypothesis, but I believe it. I can't prove, a lot of different things, right? So to say that you're not going to believe something until it's proven, you've just wiped out most of your your epistemological framework. So. Hey, Christy, you want to come in too? The Discord is open. Come on in, Christy. We missed you. We had Christy Santiago the other day, and it was wonderful. Like I said, she is by far one of my favorite humans of all time. The people that just joined, I just gave you membership so you can come on into the channel. Yeah, come join me, Christy. I love my Christy. Let's see here. Rez joined us. Rez, what you got for us?
I just woke up.
And this is going to
What
put you
the
back to
fuck
sleep.
is going on?
Well, I was having a conversation with X, but his phone died. And can I give a piece of advice to people? If you're going to be on Discord and you're going to be doing this stuff, get just a MacBook or something, right? Don't be using a phone with one of those little headphones with a mic. They're crap. I look, I used to use them too, and I know that they're crap. I will never go back to them again. I'd rather just not stream. We want Christy. We want Christy. All right, well, how
If
about
you want actually good advice, never buy an Apple product.
Yeah, well, I'm not. Yeah, I don't buy Apple either. But I mean, just get something. Even a Chromebook, whatever. I have a T430, and it's a nice little. I think that's a. No, that's not i7 core. It's a. What is it? I think it is an i7. I don't know. It's a nice little computer. The T-Book T430. But anyways, Mr. Sirius, would you want to add on anything that we've talked about so far?
Hello, Steve.
Hey,
how are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. I was having a nice discussion until his phone died.
I was watching that. His phone looked like it was on its last legs.
Yeah.
And that's a shame. I don't use a phone to talk to people. Right now I'm using my really good mic. So do I sound better than
sound
usual?
Great.
Awesome.
In fact, I have to turn down the desktop audio now because you're. Yeah, you sound wonderful. And let's see, a nice clear mic. I have what's called a Focusrite system. It's nice. It's nice. $200.
Cool.
System. But it's made a huge difference over my prior things. Yeah.
I hate to say it, Steve, but Mr. Sirius sounds far more professional than you when it comes to the audio quality.
Oh yeah, no, he's got a good rig. Yeah, no, hey, doesn't bother me, man. I don't have mic envy.
I'm gonna take over the channel. Take it over. Change the name of the stream, Mr. Serious Show.
The Mr. Serious Show. The not so Mr. Serious Show. Yeah. Check general chat.
Well,
okay. One sec.
You should call it Why So Serious.
Ooh.
I agree with you, Steve. Shocker. You gotta believe things that you don't directly interact with. I mean, that's kind of like. I mean, I see the same kind of hang-ups when it comes to like flat earthers, where if they don't directly observe it, then they don't believe it. And I mean, people just don't operate that way on anything or on everything. So like, there's always some kind of intellectual. I can't think of the word. It's like where you think one way about this, but then you make a special case for this other thing that you believe, where it's allowed to break all these rules that you don't break on all the other things that you believe. Special pleading, is that what it is?
Yeah, well, special pleading is where you say, look, these are the conditions for this particular set, but this one is exempt, and you don't have an actual reason why it's exempt.
Yeah, I believe tons of stuff that I haven't interacted with directly. I'm willing to be okay with that. Everybody, I think, does it. Otherwise, you end up becoming like a solipsist or something, and nobody wants that.
Yeah, like I said, I think they limit their epistemological framework by saying things like that. They want to sound cool and hip, right? They want to go, oh, look, I don't have any beliefs that are untrue. Let's call it a conceited reasoner, somebody who believes that they have no false beliefs. I don't think a conceited reasoner is a sensible position. We all have false beliefs, right? I mean, it's the way we're humans. An accurate reasoner is somebody who doesn't actually have any false beliefs. I don't think an accurate reasoner actually exists. I don't think they're epistemologically possible. Because I think we all have some kind of false beliefs, whether they're cognitive of them or not. But when an atheist is trying to sound all cool and hip and edgy and use these things like agnostic atheist and, oh, well, I don't believe anything until it's been demonstrated. The fuck you don't. That's
right.
I can tell you right now that you're lying or just you're extremely confused. You know, I don't want to use the word lying, but they are extremely confused. By the way, Mother Nature, what am I looking for? Well, hang on one sec. I got a admin thing. Mother Nature keeps telling me to look in the general chat. I'm in the general chat, but I don't know what I'm looking at. So I'm trying to. I don't know what she wants me to look at. Anyways, go ahead. Sorry.
When it comes to saying that you don't have the burden of proof, it's like you expecting the other person to kind of do all of the debate work like for you and then go through their side. I don't think it's like it's almost like you've given up on trying to convince the other person. It's like you have to convince me back to be a theist, but I'm not even going to try to convince you that my side is correct because I'm not bringing anything to the table.
Yeah, well, that's why I think a lot of those things are just painstakingly boring. When somebody just sits back and says, I don't believe you. I mean, anybody could pull a Matt Dillahunty and go, I don't believe you. That's not a conversation. That's not a dialectic. You're not having a synthesis of the minds and trying to come up with some kind of conclusion between the two or to change anybody's position, right? I think it's counterproductive. I don't understand when atheists say, well, I don't have a burden of proof. Well, then what the hell are you having a conversation for? What the hell's the point? Why would you not want to own your burden of proof and explain to the theist why you think they're wrong?
We have to address the Beat Saber master we have in the chat right now. So, not sure what she's doing out there.
I don't know. Come on in.
She's between her Beat Saber. I'm gonna sound like a freaking old person. Beat Saber matches. I don't know what they call that.
But it is funny because that guy X did change his position over in the atheist Discord. He's like, yeah, I can see. I never thought about that before. Then Agnostic Atheism. It is kind of nonsensical. I'm like, so the reason I could tell him that because I had a burden of proof. Should be to explain my position to change his mind, right? I mean, if I have a burden of persuasion, is what it's actually called, right? If I'm having a conversation with somebody and I want to change their position, that's a burden of persuasion, which is a type of burden of proof. Yeah.
That's interesting. I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, well, the whole term burden of proof comes from onus probandi, which is what it actually means is the burden to show evidence for something, right? The burden lies within the person to make the positive claim. And in judicial terms, in evidential terms, in the law case, there's actually a little more nuance to that particular phrase. The term onus probandi can be referred to multiple different things, including what's called burden of production. Burden of production is the amount of burden that required to the court in order to even bring something to have charges. The burden of persuasion is what's to persuade the jury or the judge. So these are two types of burdens of proof that exist in the judicial system, but don't exist so much in the epistemological sense, right? I think the burden of persuasion could be carried over, but do you really have an onus to persuade somebody? No, unless your goal is, as I say, look, I claim I can convince you. Now I have a burden of persuasion, right? Because now I've made a claim that I can actually do something, and there's a performative issue there, right? I have to follow through with that. As a condition of this compact I made with you. I made some kind of a declarative statement that I can actually do something, right? So that's the fine. But if I just say, look, I believe X is the case, and somebody says, well, why do you believe that? I don't really have an onus to tell them why, unless I want to. I mean, I only have to justify it to myself. There's no burden that says, hey, you stated this. You're stating a claim. You owe it to me to give me your burden of proof. No, you don't. You can just do a self-assessment, right? You can just be saying, well, I'm just telling you what my state of affairs are, my self-assessment or autobiographical, but I'm not stating to you that I can actually persuade you or, give you enough justification that would satisfy you to change your position, right?
Yeah. And I think, I feel like debates work that way kind of, but they kind of don't, because you're trying to convince an audience, but people never change their positions in debates.
Very
rarely.
Hate
debates.
Very rarely. Well, I mean, my first debate, he changed the position, obviously. Wayne Fillmore left Young Earth Creationism because of my first debate with him.
Really?
Yeah, he was a Young Earth Creationism, and we were debating macroevolution. And about 2 hours later, he came back in the after show and said, I started looking up some of the things you were saying, and then what you said seems to be the case. He's like, I was never told this by Young Earth Creationists. To them, they said macroevolution doesn't exist. It's all bullshit. But the way you explained it, and then when I look in the science, because he was a science guy, he's like, this seems to be right. And then he took about a month off and came back, and he's like, you know what? I cannot support Young Earth Creationism any longer. Ken Hove is a con man, and now he's an old Earth person. But, he definitely recognized that Young Earth Creationism is BS. Well, if that's not a win for a debate, I don't know what would be, right?
Right. I mean, But I wish that was the challenge, because you have two people, both of them are going to like play different sides in it. I think it would be more educational for the two people to be actually trying to convince each other, and then we can kind of watch along, and maybe we'll get convinced like along with these people, instead of just trying to convince the audience, and who cares about the guy that was sitting across from you, if you know what I mean.
Well, yeah, and that's how I look at when I do my debates. That's what I try to do, right? I mean, like when I debated true empiricism, you know, he left middle of the debate because he was getting his ass handed to him. I mean, he literally left, said, "I don't want to continue," because I was explaining to him. I had two presentations, one on turbine theory using thermodynamics, and one on ATP synthase using biology, biochemistry, to explain enzymatic functions and what the ATP synthase does. And I was trying to, because the debate was on, is ATP synthase a turbine? And I
remember that one.
Yeah, I mean, it's been deleted, unfortunately, but my argument was no, it's not a turbine, because a turbine converts fluid into mechanical rotational energy, right? So you have to have some kind of fluid, like steam, goes through the impellers and turns the impellers, that turns the rotor. That's a turbine, right? Or air is a turbine. When you have like those wind things, that's a turbine, because it's called a wind turbine, because your air is a fluid. But ATP synthase doesn't work on a fluid differential. What it works on is a proton differential, called a hydrogen ion gradient, a proton pump. That's not a freaking fluid. So I thought the analogy of a turbine breaks down. Now, could you call it a motor? Yeah, I would call it a motor, but only on the F1 part of the ATP synthase.
So he was. I mean, I must not have seen this, but my guess is that the argument is that he was trying to say that body parts were akin to machinery and couldn't evolve. Was that the?
Well, I mean, he was just trying to. He took the analogy of a turbine and motor too far, right? I mean, he holds that ATP synthase, yeah, is like intelligently designed. When instead of just being a bunch of proteins that are put together, and we know where these proteins came from, and so I mean, I'm fine if you look at the structure of the ATP synthase. If you look at what's called the F1, you have the F naught and the F1 portion. The F1 portion is where you produce ATP from ADP, right? So you protonize the ADP and it produces ATP. That can be considered to be a motor in some ways, right? Like a rotary type motor. There's the proton pump in the F naught position, F naught part of the enzyme. Yeah, it's a proton pump. I'm okay with that terminology, right? So you can call the top a proton pump and the bottom a motor. But the turbine analysis to me fell apart. And so I was trying to explain to him why. But when we got to the Q&A, he's like, yeah, I don't want to continue. And then a year later, he's like, well, I wasn't really interested in that debate, so I wasn't really doing that well. And it's like, you bugged me for a year on a debate. I finally cave in, and I was like, I'm gonna kick your ass. And yeah, okay. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's nice to say after the fact.
Yeah, Dr. Zaya says like a Wanko engine. Yes, a Wanko engine is like a motor, a rotary engine, like a Mazda RX-7. Very similar to that, right? Matter of fact, if you look at the ATP synthase, it looks kind of like a Wanko engine. So yeah,
it does.
Yeah.
Can we go back to the other topic with the agnostic?
Love to. What you got for me? Hey, by the way, what's up, David?
Not much. How you doing?
Good.
Enjoying this nice home life.
Stuck at home, yeah.
Yeah, me working from home sucks. Of course, you're used to that, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's what I do. This is my job. Become a member. Join the channel. I got a new Patreon today. Yay! Thank you for a new Patreon. So become a patron. Join the channel. Send a super chat. Whatever works. I need some shekels, man. It's been rough.
I'm a member.
You get green. Look, you like Kowalski gets green. Green, yay. All right, so let's go back on the agnostic atheism. What's your questions for me, my friend?
Well, there's something that confuses me about it, because philosophically, logically, like everything you say, I pretty much agree with. Well, actually, I agree with everything.
Yeah, you're smart.
I mean, it's really hard to logically. It's really hard to argue, because it is what it is.
Logic is
But
objective, you're saying. Wow, who knew, right?
well, yeah, I mean,
Unless you're one
yeah.
of my
So I really don't
detractors
want
that ignore the logic and just say Steve doesn't know what he's talking about. Okay, great.
to. No, I think you know what you're talking about. Well, nobody's perfect, but for the most part,
I have a decent
And
understanding of this topic.
yeah, I mean, Jesus, how many? It's been years now, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been a long time. Go ahead.
Yeah. Anyway, so I just want to talk about a sort of a two-world situation that out of listening to all these debates that are happening on this subject and reading some things and even trying to understand some philosophy in a basic sense. It seems to me that there's two worlds happening here. You have the new atheist, agnostic atheist kind of world that's going on, and then you have the scholarly philosophical discussion that's going on, and that there are two completely different worlds, and they're sort of colliding. But I don't think that either one is wrong. I think they're both right, and the reason why I say that is because I think one is dealing with a completely different. It's almost a different epistemology, right? It's taking a subject that's been one way for so long, and then sort of ramming into it in the opposite direction and hoping to break out somewhere in a sensible middle is what I really think. That's how I viewed it as I was sort of moving through this subject.
Yeah, I don't like to use the terms right and wrong, right? Because I think they read too much into things. What is right and wrong? Now, do I believe there's a right way to interpret certain things? Okay, but I'm not saying that they're wrong to use such usages. That's never been my argument. My argument is being, if they use these usages, what is the baggage that goes along with it? What is the consequences, right? And I find these consequences to be one that leads to irrationality. It leads to category errors. It leads to vagueness. These things you have to generally, I think, accept if you really look into their terminological approach to these types of epistemologies. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying they're wrong to do it. I've never said agnostic atheism is wrong. What I say is it's nonsensical or it's superfluous, or what do you mean by it? Because you ask 12 different atheists what agnostic atheist means, you're probably going to get 12 different versions of it. Like X had a version of it that was completely different from what somebody else would say, right? He was trying to say that agnostic atheism is, I don't believe in God and I'm open-minded to change my mind. Okay, well now, how do you get that out of agnostic atheist? I mean, I don't know many people that even read that into that, right? So it's so vague what they mean by it.
Yeah, but I think that you're talking two different worlds. Like, I think that it's a matter of ignorance, right? I was ignorant of this philosophical sense of what you're talking about, this whole philosophical, logical world. And I was thinking about the thing that made sense to me is that I grew up in a land where theological beliefs, right, were the norm. That's the standard, right? This is really the real thing, and everybody's got this idea of God or something thereof. And so anything that fell outside of that was derided. It was looked down upon. It was, you're the weirdo, right? Like, this isn't, you have to believe in this. So you got to look at it from that angle. So a person who finally comes out of it and has this emotional response, like, wow, I've been lied to my whole life. Like, there really isn't much justification for this. And, this is crazy. Like, people are basically lying to me and they don't even know they're doing it. So I wish I could articulate a little better.
No, I
do
understand that. I mean, you articulated just fine. But what I find is this: when people lose religion, when people come out of a theistic type belief, they tend to want to latch into something else, because that doesn't mean they somehow become a critical thinker. And then they latch on to this really simplistic views of atheism and agnosticism and all this other stuff. And they go, oh, This is simple. It works for me. Okay, fair enough, right? They don't have the expertise to really go any further. They don't know the arguments. They don't even know the terminology. Cool. But then when they start looking into it, and they go, hey, groups like the American Atheist and groups like Atheist Republic and groups like the Atheist Community of Austin are not quite putting out information correctly, right? They can say all they want that that's how they use these terms. That's never been a problem. But when they say that's common and ubiquitous in academia, when they say that, hey, look, this is the way it is, there is no other usage of these things. It's not these words are not polysemous. Then there's a problem because that is an objectively false statement. When somebody says something like atheism is just the belief that atheism is just the position of non-belief or just somebody who doesn't believe in God, that objectively is a false statement, right? It doesn't matter what you believe about anything. Objectively, right, mind independent of any kind of bias, that statement's false. And you could prove it to be false using logic because all you have to do is go find a usage in philosophy of atheism as the belief that God doesn't exist, and that statement becomes false. That statement that becomes a truth maker to that falsifies that condition, right? You only need one instance of a truth maker to show that a proposition is false. Just one, right? Any defeater, right? If I say that all swans are white and I find a black swan, I have defeated that proposition. And that instantiation of a what's called a token distinction, where I have an actual token of a particular type of swan that is instantiated that exists as a truth maker to show that proposition is false, boom, it's no longer a true statement, right? And so
Indeed.
all it takes is one. So that statement by saying atheism is just a lack of belief or just somebody who believes that doesn't believe that there's God, it's already a proven false statement. This is what they don't understand. This is when a lot of atheists start learning about this stuff, they go, yeah, that makes sense. But then you tell somebody from the atheist community of Austin that, they're like, oh, that's just wrong. Okay, why is it wrong? And then they block you.
Yeah, I think that's where it gets complicated, is that ACA, they do this other kind of definition of how things are, and they just expect everybody to go with it. But they also do not allow that definition to be put up for scrutiny, which kind of, even if you just look at them alone, the fact that they won't even talk about it shows how weak the argument is to begin with.
Oh, I thought, dude, 100% right on that, because I say scrutinize me on my position.
To me.
What's that?
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No,
they're kind of a political organization almost. I mean, they have a different agenda. And I think that where the mismatch is that they were looking in a different world and they're coming from a different point of view. And I hear what you're saying, and I would never argue against logic that way. You're correct. And if somebody was, they should practice more of what they preach, right? And that when they see something that's wrong, they should change their mind, especially when it's so clear. But in a sense, it took me a long time to sort of hear what you were saying, because I came out of a place where I was bludgeoned over the head with this theological stance that it was correct, right? Like I'm the weirdo. So it's an emotional response, and it just like it is so hard coming out of theism. It's very hard to say like, wow, I screwed up again. I'm not actually correct on this idea, but yet at the same time, I'm so mad at theology. I think
you're exactly right. No, you're exactly right. They it's pride. It's hubris. It's arrogance.
It is a bit.
It's smugness. And this is when Matt Dillahunty said I was smug. And I was like, pot, kettle, black, meat. I was like, look, I'm not smug in any way, shape, or form. I'm confident. And people confuse those two traits. But I am so open-minded. If somebody wants to say, hey, your logic sucks, and that's fine, by the way. I do get some logic stuff wrong. I admit that. I'm not an expert in logic. But if they say, hey, you're wrong in your argument, then come on in and demonstrate it, right? I mean, that's the whole point of being open-minded. Demonstrate it, show but they don't do that. Like, I think it was Mr. Serious said, they don't even entertain these concepts, right? Steve is wrong by fiat, in their view. But never once have they demonstrated, and never once has Matt Dillahunty actually, he has never once that I've seen addressed my actual positions. He's straw man, right? But he's never addressed my actual positions, or he's done what's called an ignoranto elenchi, which is he's argued some position that we probably would both agree with. That's not my actual position, right? He shows something else to be the case that's wrong, but that's not my position, right? It's not really a straw man per se, but it's just like, well, yeah, okay, that's fine. I agree with you. That's not the case, but that's not my position, right?
Well, maybe you can address this point that I find myself confused about while digging into these topics. Is I really feel like sometimes I'm jumping back and forth. Like I really see sort of Matt's point of view in a way, and I definitely see your way. But there's still this part of me that's holding on to this idea that, wow, so it sounds like what you're saying is that anybody can just sort of pull a rabbit out of their ass and go, this is this, right? And so this is a thing. And so now I have to spend my time justifying why that's not a thing. You understand what I'm saying?
Sort of. I mean, yeah, anybody can have stipulated usages if that's what you mean. But when the ACA fails is that when they have these stipulative usages, they pull the rabbit out of the hat, they don't want to talk about the baggage that comes along with it, right? They don't want to address any of the arguments that say, look, these are the necessary consequences because of your terminology here. These are what the entailments would be. These are the logical consequences. They don't want to talk about any of that because I've yet to have any single solitary atheist ever explain away those logical consequences. At most, they might bite the bullet and they say, yeah, okay, but it's a category error, or sure, a theist could do that and say that you're a theist as well. Okay, that's fine. But at that point, now you're accepting that somebody's like an atheist and a theist at the same time, which wouldn't be a logical contradiction in that paradigm, but it's not how we have conversations, right? We want to have a difference between atheism and agnosticism and theism. We don't want them all to be the same thing because then you lose granularity. But what the atheist community of Austin has done, they put everybody on the same umbrella to the point where there's no differences any longer. An atheist and an agnostic, they don't differentiate. And if you really want to get into that deep argument that I have about weak atheism and weak theism, they're also theists too. I can actually make a case that Matt Dillahunty is a theist if he doesn't hold a particular belief either way, which by the way he does. I've heard him argue. Yeah, he actually believes there are no gods, right? Aaron thinks there's no gods, right? These guys are actual strong atheists, right? They're atheists in the sense.
But there's where the sticking point is for me, right? Like I want to jump to your camp completely and just say I'm an agnostic, right? But and this may be completely emotional, maybe it is, but it seems that there's a grain of logic here, even though that the math doesn't work out, and that is that I
have a quick question, Damon.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have never seen Matt Dillahunty like work the math on his whole explanation for like what is an atheist and what isn't. Like, has he ever?
No.
Have you ever seen him like philosophically present his argument, or just say the argument?
Only colloquially, like not in a formal sense.
I mean, I've read Steve's work. I was confused as all hell by it. I've watched like 3 to 4 streams of him explaining.
That's what everybody wants to hear. I read your shit. I don't get it.
and then I finally understood after about 5 hours of streams and reading it completely.
Did you read my last one? That was hard. The one I did.
Oh my god!
Did you read the one that I tried to explain Dr. Alex Malpass's argument with William Lane Craig using modal logic? That was really not an easy thing to do, by the way, because that's a hard argument.
Did you write it in English? I'm curious.
I don't know. Did you read it?
I like skimmed over it, and I'm like, I'm not. This is it. I
had Alex look it over. I actually had Alex look it over, and I also had Dr. Josh Rasmussen look it over. Now, again, they didn't do a full deep dive in it. They did a very cursory, so there still might be errors in it. But they're like, no, we think you got the gist down. And I'm like, okay, that's all I'm going for. I'm just going for the gist.
So how would you articulate the sort of knowledge, belief? I know I've heard you explain it before, but this is the thing that's still bothering me, is that I want to say that I'm agnostic, but I'm an atheist. I don't believe there's any gods. I just don't believe that. But But at the same sense, I'm not an idiot. Like logically, problem of deduction, I can't say there is no God. Like I
Why
can't
not?
do that
Why not?
because
let me try to suss
nobody
out your
can
position.
prove it.
Well, okay, let me try to suss your position here, because you're what's called, I call and I know you are. You're called an honest interlocutor, and what I mean by that is you're somebody that wants to have a dialogue and actually, have productivity, because you see all these dishonest interlocutors from the ACA and stuff like that, and just, oh my God, it just drives me crazy. So as somebody who has an honest interlocutor, I accept things like principle rationality with you. So I think that you want to have a rational position. You're striving to say what is the best position for me, right? I mean, okay,
Absolutely,
right.
That's
So
what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to figure this out.
Let's do that. Okay, because don't take a label merely because it's a label. I mean, I think that.
Oh no.
Yeah. So
I'm
I don't
just
think
trying to fit my brain and explain it to somebody in a short enough fashion that it doesn't take me all week. But like, I really believe that I'm an atheist, but.
All right, well, let's run with that.
Philosophically, I guess I'm an agnostic because I can never. But I think everybody has to be an agnostic because nobody can ever know that there's this subject.
I've already figured out the confusion. Okay, so we're gonna try to suss out your confusion, because I already know what it is. Using straight epistemology type approaches. Okay, and this is gonna be just like Socratic method, opening-ended questions as much as possible. Although I do use closed questions as well, but this is, I think, where your issue lies. Given the proposition of God exists, okay, start from the beginning. A theist is, for this schema, a theist would be somebody who believes that to be true, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And to be rational, they would have some kind of justification to believe that God exists, right?
I hope so.
Do you hold that a theist to hold that belief requires certainty or knowledge?
I would think it would have to be at least 51%. Right?
Oh, okay. So whatever you just say you're convinced means that you reached a certain threshold that you actually have the belief. I think 51 is not high enough, but if you're going to quantize it, because
I agree. It has to be more than the half.
Yeah, I get you. It has to be over 50% clearly, right? Because if not, if you're 49% and you're convinced, that to me, I'm going to put it as irrational, right? Because you cannot properly justify that. Agreed?
Agreed.
Okay. And for the sake of this argument, right? You could probably get more detailed than that, but
sorry, I wasn't trying to be pedantic.
No, this is great. I love this. This is fine. Be pedantic. You would say that a theist who says, I believe God exists, they're not saying that for certainty. They're not claiming any knowledge. So if that's the case for a theist, why would you think that an atheist should be held to a different standard? An atheist can say, I believe there's no gods. All gods are bullshit. They're not claiming it as knowledge. They're not claiming it as certainty. What's the difference?
Well, nothing.
There you go.
Except, I guess I'm putting I'm putting a position on the theist, right, that they might not hold, which is that most theists would say that they know.
Well,
right? They're not just saying they believe.
Yeah, not all do that. And by the way, when they do,
The ones that matter.
most of them are not using the word know as in the epistemological sense, right? Because I don't think they understand what it means to say, I know that P.
Yeah, I don't either.
Yeah.
And we believe tons of things that we don't know for certain. Like, we would say, I believe tomorrow is going to happen.
Yes.
So the same thing can be used for God beliefs too.
Yes. Matter of fact, there's two main types of conditions for knowledge. There's what's called the strong case acceptance and the weak case acceptance. The strong case acceptance of knowledge is that knowledge requires certainty. There are some philosophers out there that think that is a condition for knowledge, certainty. That's not the prevalent view, though, by any stretch of the imagination.
What's certain?
Yeah, you get epistemic certainty and Descartes certainty is very, very complicated, right? But
You have to read that.
The weak condition, right? The weak belief condition for knowledge means that knowledge doesn't require certainty, but it does require belief. That's the most standard. That's what I hold to. So you can know something and not be certain of it. You can believe something and not be certain of it.
What's the updated version of the sort of justified true belief?
What do you mean? There's just something called
Justified
JTP+.
true belief.
Yeah.
Isn't that knowledge?
Yeah, well, justified true belief, there's three things for knowledge, right? It's tripartite, which is the proposition has to be true, the subject has to believe the proposition, and the subject has to be justified to believe the proposition. Those are considered to be canonical for what it takes to have a condition for knowability, or that you know something to be the case. You know that P, it's called. But as you guys have heard before, Gettier came along and said, hey, there's some problems with this, right? There are conditions where you think you would have knowledge when you really don't. And by the way, knowledge cannot be false. Knowledge cannot be anything but true, right? You cannot have false knowledge. And you can say, well, wait a minute. I said I know something, but I was wrong. Yes, but you didn't have knowledge to begin with. You were wrong about having the knowledge, but knowledge wasn't wrong. You just didn't have knowledge to begin with.
My knowledge was a belief.
This
You didn't have the justification.
It was a belief. And beliefs, by the way, can be false, right? You can have a false belief. This is called the principle of attribution and retraction that I wrote about on my blog a long time ago. About when we say, look, I believe tomorrow's going to rain, and then tomorrow comes along and it didn't rain. Do I say that I didn't have a belief? No, I say my belief is wrong, right? Of course I had the belief, but my belief was errant. But if I say that I know it's going to rain tomorrow, and tomorrow comes along and it doesn't rain, I don't say that my knowledge was wrong. What I say was I was wrong about having the belief that I had knowledge, right? I just say that I didn't have knowledge to begin with. My claim to knowledge was incorrect. See the difference?
Right.
There's a substantial difference to be had there.
It's sort of our access to, or our ability to actually know what is true. You know what I mean? What is actual?
Sure.
That's the confusing part to me. Like, otherwise, it just sort of seems like, why even use the word knowledge? Just use belief and the certainty sort of scale.
It's funny you mentioned that. There's actually a problem out there called the swamping problem, which is why we value, or the value added problem to why we value knowledge over justified true belief. What makes knowledge over true belief, right? I mean, whether it's justified or not, if it's true belief, why do we care if it's knowledge or not? There's a whole thing in epistemology. What's the difference? What does it matter? What is added value-wise to say I know that P as opposed to I believe P is true, if it is true that P is true, right? But that's a whole different ballgame. But let me give you an example. I had a guy the other day on Twitter, and he was talking about truth. And he wouldn't answer simple questions. In 3 days, Chester, I was even asking him questions. The guy wouldn't answer shit, right? And he asked me a question about how do you justify something without evidence. And I explained to him pragmatism, and I explained to him potentialism and non-evidentialism. He didn't understand any of it. And I was like, look, if you don't understand my answers, then I can't help you unless I know what your level is. So I asked him, well, what do you mean by these certain terms? He couldn't answer my questions, right? I wanted to suss out what he was using these terms like from his schema. And I even was asking, well, what do you mean by true, right? Because there's different ways of looking at truth, right? If people know the correspondence theory, what true is what corresponds with reality, sure. But there's something out there called truth makers and truth conditionals. They're not exactly the same thing. And it's a very, very confusing epistemology. So I'm going to throw it out there. Maybe people can glean something from it. And by the way, isn't epistemology fun?
Oh, yeah.
But a truth
It's
maker...
the only thing.
I love this other. I mean, I love epistemology. I
could do this all day, every day. I love it.
This is my jam. Is but again, what the hell do I know? Ask Matt Dillahunty and Arn. Steve's just fundamentally wrong by fiat. Okay, so a truth maker would be something along the lines of, let's say if I say dogs exist. Well, there's a dog in the other room here. Okay, that dog is an instantiation of dogs. It exists. It has ontology, right? That is a truth maker that makes the statement dogs exist true. Okay, there you go. Pretty simple, right? It's a truth maker that says, what makes this proposition true? It is the case that a dog exists because here's a dog, right? And what makes the dog true is that there's a causal theory that I'm looking at a dog, it's producing an image in my head. I mean, you get the nuances of epistemology, but it's still a truth maker. A truth conditional, however, is a little bit different. A truth conditional is not some kind of instantiation. Truth conditional would be something along the lines of, I say, hey, look, I'm taller than Rez. Well, what makes that statement true is the fact that Rez is shorter than me, right? It's not things being instantiated, but there's something about the state of affairs of the universe that makes it such that I can observe it. He's taller than me. I'm shorter than, or I'm taller than him, he's shorter than me. So when I say it is true that Rez is taller, or excuse me, it is true that Steve is taller than Steve, there's a truth condition that exists by the fact that, well, he's shorter than me, that exists that makes that statement true. So there's some subtle differences between those two things. And hopefully I'm explaining it right to Ozzy if he ever listens to this, because he'll be going, damn, Steve.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
When it comes to the conditionals, are you referring to something that where, like, if somebody like cut your legs off, it would stop being true?
Well, I mean, depends what your proposition is. If I say, like, for example, there's a problem there. Like, if I say, like, humans are bipedal.
Yeah.
Okay. And I say, well, if I cut your legs off, you're no longer a human. But
Well,
these are called accidental properties.
I mean, like, when you're talking about you being taller than Rez, if somebody cut your legs off, then you would be shorter than Rez.
Correct. So the truth condition has changed.
So that's why it's what it's called.
Yeah. So it's not an instantiation, right? It's not a dog that exists. You have a type of dogs, then you have a token, right? So the token is an instantiation of a specific type. So I have the reason what makes the statement dogs exist true is something that exists that I'm looking at called a dog, right? That's the truth maker that makes it the case. Now, Maki had pointed out in the live chat, Sosa's paper, The Raft and the Pyramid, one of the hardest papers in the world to read. I can only make it through about half before my brain melts to butter. But Sosa's paper points out the difference between justifications by foundationism and coherentism. And then with Linda Zagzebesky, she came along and Zagzebesky said that all belief first conditions, all belief first models of knowledge fatally suffer from Gettier cases and what's called epistemic luck cases. And I think she's right. So I bite the bullet on the justified true belief. Now there's some ways around that, but even trying to get around it, it doesn't actually solve it. There's what's called truth tracking conditions. Justified true belief plus would be, you have something called sensitivity and safety. And these are different things relating to possible world theories. And it's basically saying what makes it knowledge is if there's somebody in the next possible world over would believe it if it be the case based upon, I think it's counterfactuals if I remember correctly. But I tried reading about these truth tracking conditions, very difficult stuff. Not even going to try to explain safety and security, or safety and sensitivity. But I do know that it deals with possible worlds to try to get around some of these Gettier cases. But she argues very effectively that you can never get around them completely because there's always going to be some kind of epistemic luck in these cases, which means you just got fortunate, you got lucky, right? And that means that you didn't have knowledge under those conditions.
Well, my brain is officially melted. Damon, where were you before that?
I mean, you're familiar with Gettier cases, right? I mean, you've heard of them.
I've heard about it, yeah, but I have not looked into it.
Okay.
I try to stay on my own level.
Well, I mean, it's not that complicated. A simple example. I mean, Gettier wrote very specific cases, but I'll give you my version. Something along the lines of, look, you wake up in the morning and you look at the clock, and the clock reads 6 a.m. and you have to be at work at 7. So you get up, you get dressed, and you get to work, and you go to work, and it's 7 o'clock when you get to work. You come home, and you find out the clock is still saying 6 a.m. The clock is broken. Now, when you went up to go to work, you can say, hey, look, I know it's 6 a.m. and I'm going to work. But since the clock wasn't a reliable mechanism by which to determine it was actually 6 a.m., it was just epistemic luck that it happened to stop at 6 a.m. Did you really have knowledge? According to the JTP model, no, because you weren't justified to believe that it was knowledge. Now, there's other forms of theories of knowledge called reliabilism. That has problems too, by the way, called the swampy problem. But under justified true belief, Gettier argued you weren't justified to say you had knowledge because you didn't have you relied on something that wasn't the case. It was not the case. It was a clock showing you 6 a.m. So your justificatory condition was false. Does it make sense?
Yeah. So this is just describing the issues that I kind of pointed out earlier of then why use knowledge, right? Because it's really hard to. Yeah.
That's a standing argument in epistemology. What good does knowledge give us as opposed to just having a true belief? If I say 1 + 1 = 2 is true, and I believe that, and if I say 1 + 1 = 2 and I know it, have I added any value to anything?
I mean, can anything be certain except for a tautology? Like
Well, yeah,
1
but I'm not
plus
even talking
1
about
equals
certainty.
2.
Forget certainty. Just straight up. I believe 1 plus 1
Right.
equals 2. And then I say I know 1 plus 1 equals 2. Now, in your mind's eye, there's a pure locutionary act that you think there's a higher degree of confidence when I say I know as opposed to I believe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
But does it change anything factually wise? It is the case that 1 plus 1 equals 2. That's a fact, right? It's a true
Only your
statement.
state of mind. It's a state of mind that we're talking about.
But does it add any value? I believe, and it's true.
Only if I'm trying to more clearly understand your perspective.
I don't think it's the case.
If you know something, that means you automatically state that you believe it.
Yes.
Like they have to go hand in hand.
Right.
But the only thing I can think of is that in the mind of the listener, the perlocutionary effect that they might have is they're saying, well, he's more confident, right? When he says, I know, that rather than just I believe.
That's what I mean.
But
I could say, well, a person says they believe something. I'm like, okay, yeah, they think that's true. If somebody says I know something, I'm like, yeah, they don't just simply believe this. They're so confident in it that I bet they would back that.
But
back that up?
And I totally agree with that. But if you look at it, does it value anything differently epistemological wise? Because if it is true, if it is the case that 1 plus 1 equals 2, does it really? What does it matter? Whether I believe 1 plus 1 equals 2 because 1 plus 1 is 2, or if I say I know 1 plus 1 equals 2 because 1 plus 1 equals 2, I don't see a difference as far as anything to add to value wise.
Yeah,
no, I guess not in that way. No.
Yeah.
It doesn't become more to.
Does it come? Yeah, exactly. It doesn't become more true, right? Yeah, it doesn't become more true.
But it's a tautology, right? Yeah. Like it doesn't in that sense, it doesn't really matter. I mean, if you have something a little more vague.
Undoomed in the live chat, he's just sitting there thinking, "What? I'm not. Why do I come here? I don't know." Hey, Undoomed, I listened to your Picard rant a few weeks ago, and I hadn't watched Picard yet, and I had listened to your criticisms, and I watched, and I got to tell you, okay, you have some fair points, but it's still a good program.
Well,
I like Picard.
How do you know he's not thinking, oh, wow, that Mr. Serious guy, he's pretty awesome. He should take over the show.
I think he should. Not so, yeah, again, we're going to call it the Not So Serious Mr. Serious show.
Yeah, I'm going to put the word serious like 7 times in it.
Yeah.
It's going to be great. And then you'll be my host, you'll be my guest every day.
I want to be co-host, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I got to choice the voice chat. Okay. What am I looking at? Okay, so we got a question here.
I just have to leave, so okay. I just wanted to say, so am I agnostic or an atheist?
We never got that far. Look, I mean, if you think that gods exist, you're a theist. If you think that gods don't exist, you're an atheist. If you have no position either way, you're agnostic. And again, you don't have to be able to have any certainty or any knowledge. Forget those 2 words for a second and just say, look, I think it is more likely the case that there are no gods. I think gods are bullshit because I think it's probabilistically the case that there are no gods. Boom. You're an atheist.
That's been my position for a long time.
Then you're an atheist. And just say it. Just own it. Just say, yeah, I believe that gods don't exist. The universe is a godless state. There's no gods anywhere in the universe. That's fine. When somebody asks for your burden of proof, you say, well, look at all these arguments for atheism. Logical problem of evil, evidential problem of evil, divine lines paradox. You can throw out all this shit and say, look, I think these arguments, if you have an aggregate of them, are better arguments for the probability being the least likely case that God exists as opposed to the theist arguments that God does exist. And so weighing the arguments one way or another, I don't think that they're in the middle. I think that one is a little more disproportionate, and therefore I'm going to side to this, and I'm going to hold, because I'm convinced that there are no gods. And somebody says, well, how do you know? You say you don't. And you say, I could change my belief. I can give me more evidence that there's God, and I'll modify. I might move from theism or atheism to agnosticism. I might move from agnosticism to theism.
Holy shit, Steve. you like...
It's not that complicated,
you know me
right?
Better than me. You know me better than me.
I've done this a long time, my friend. But it isn't that complicated. People make it out to be so much more complicated. Yeah. Look, you just say, look, I'm holding the belief there are no gods right now. I'll change that position given, more evidence to evaluate. And somebody's you look at an ontological argument and go, oh, I think that might be a good argument. Maybe there is a God. I'm going to move to agnosticism.
Nothing wrong with changing what you believe over time. That's
Correct.
Called being normal.
If there's something wrong with changing your position, then what the fuck are atheists doing talking to theists trying to convert them out of theism?
Right?
Right? But they have to be opened up to change their position as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
All
And
right, thanks,
frankly, I
Steve.
think the
You're
death
welcome.
of
see you.
religion is a positive thing.
Yeah, that's anti-theism. So I got a question in the Discord here. They say, Steve, wait, how do we know anything is true? We can have justified belief, but how do we verify its validity? But again, this is what we talked about before about what two conditions are, right? What makes something true is it has a truth condition or it has a truth maker that makes the proposition be the case, right? And how do you validate that? You can do it through empiricism. You can do it through rationalism. You know, you can do it through evidentialism. You can do it through pragmatism. There are pragmatic theories of truth. There's even what's called consensus theory of truth. Where if it sounds like an argument ad populum, but it's there's a subtle difference between the two. Yeah, it's not that it's not something that is true because most people believe it. It's that you hold that to be true because it is the consensus that is true, and therefore you're not treating it as an absolute, though, right? But absolutism is a whole different ballgame, right? How do we have Cartesian certainty? It's called, right? Guess what? You don't. I don't think Cartesian certainty is even possible, but I think there's some ways of arguing against certain things effectively, like a brain in a vat. I think we can argue that we're not a brain in a vat effectively, given certain types of arguments. Putnam has one. It's called a limited, linguistic limited constraint argument or something. But there's some other ones dealing with epistemic closure and dealing with what it means to be a brain in a vat as opposed to the language we use, right? When I say I'm a brain in a vat, that doesn't hold true if I was really a brain in a vat, because those words would mean different things in that whatever realm that I exist in, right? It's outside of my epistemological sphere. So what I think is a brain in a vat and what I would actually be as a brain in a vat, there's no causal relationship between. There's no connection between the object and the reference, or the reference and the referent. So these are linguistic arguments, by the way, and they're very difficult because I hate linguistic shit because I had a speech impediment all my life. Speech act theory is hard enough for me to fucking deal with, although I like speech act theory. But
and you speak so quickly.
I've always spoke fast. I think a lot of times because I'm always thinking, and I want to get stuff out quickly. And so that comes across as speaking. It comes out as speaking quickly, and I got to work on that. That's one of my biggest pet peeves is I speak too fast.
I can follow most of the things that you say. Sometimes you say something, I'm like, what? Wait a minute, and I try to think about it, and then I miss 3 sentences. And I'm like, oh, okay. Let me catch up.
I think fast. I mean, I don't know, but one of these days we're gonna have another hangout in speech X theory because speech X theory is cool.
I mean, it can be.
Yeah.
I think it'd be cool.
Well, it's like, what are these words? What are we trying to converse with, right? When speech act theory, there's certain things that, like, for example, what does it mean when I have a commissive, right? What does it mean when I have something that I intend to do, a promise to be made? If I say, hey, look, I promise to pick you up at 2 o'clock, I now have a compact with you, right? I have a duty and obligation merely by the utterance of that statement, that commissive that I have an obligation to pick you up at 2, right?
Sure.
So
I have.
There's a duty and a responsibility to be had there. This is how we function in society. This is why honesty is so important. Because if everybody lied, and I say, hey, I'm going to pick you up at 2 o'clock, and you're like, well, fuck, Steve's a big lying poopy head. Just ask my critics. I lie every day, according to them. Then obviously you don't trust that compact, and you're not going to be waiting around for me at 2 o'clock because you didn't have any, quote, reliability with me or faith, in me to pick you up. So this is why it's important in society to be honest with your interlocutors. And this is what's so funny when people attack my credibility. It's because they can't attack my arguments. So they have to make it sound like, oh, well, Steve's a lying poopy head. He lies all the fucking time. You know how many people have ever caught me in a lie in 8 years on YouTube? Zero fucking people. Not a goddamn fucking one. They think they fucking have. And then when you ask them, well, okay, what's the lie? Oh, it's out there in the ethosphere. It's out there in some YouTube channel. It's this, and this. And people go, wait a minute. No, you totally took Steve out of context, and he didn't lie about any of that shit. Oh, you're just a Steve sycophant. You're a troll.
Oh, well, I mean, there was that one time when you said you loved me.
No, I still do.
Okay, awesome. Well, I have an idea.
Love changes over time. It
Gaslighting
fades.
motherfucker.
Yeah, it fades.
Yeah, I have an idea, and it's something I was thinking about, and I'm going to run this by you. an idea that like if we could link brains with each other and communicate that way, then we would have a way more accurate communication with somebody, and that language in general is kind of us like flailing like into the void trying to get across what we think to somebody else. Like it's a really bad way to communicate. We could, if we linked our brains,
Language
would be
sloppy.
like, yeah, that's I have an idea that that's the case because I'm doing it right now.
The language is
Trying to
messy.
explain this.
Well, and this is what I said before. Look, like for example, when the statement, I believe God exists. I believe in God. Okay, that statement, I believe in God. We tend to think that would be existence, right? If I say I believe in God, we're stating that as a performance, not performance, but an utterance that we hold the belief that God exists. It's an ontological statement, right? I believe in God is an ontological statement that you think God exists. But to a theist, they may mean it in a different way. When they say I believe in God, they're not necessarily saying that they believe God exists. They're saying that I believe in the God to do the right thing, to trust me, to guide me. They have faith in God, right? Like if I say I believe in my daughter to do well in school, right? So if I say I believe in my daughter, it means I have faith in my daughter. I'm not trying to convey to you that my daughter exists. So a certain sentence can mean different things in different ways. And so language is very sloppy.
I'm not sure if that is something that can ever be like fixed with language. Like if we came out with a new English, like English 2, to try to solve that problem, I don't think it could even be like addressed like realistically.
Maybe not. Like I said, I think that when you're dealing with speech act theory, at least tries to really get across what a person's doing, because you have what's called the locution, what you say. You have the illocution force, which the illocution is what you kind of mean by your words. And then you have the perlocution, which is the effect upon the listener. They're not necessarily the same thing. So when I say I believe in God, right, that's my locution, that statement, I believe in God. But the illocution might be that I am telling the person I have faith in God. But the perlocution effect may be that they're listening in it and they hear Steve believes God exists, right?
Right.
Now, that's obviously not my position, but so like I said, it's very, very messy. But I do like the obligations and duties that we have by speech act theory. Like I said, when you have a commissive and you say, I promise to do something, you have a binding pact with that person. And that goes into, virtue epistemology, virtue ethics, and what it means to have a duty to somebody, and why we don't have a society based upon liars. If everybody lied, it would be very, very difficult to get anything done, because you could never trust anybody to do anything, right? I mean, if you had a business and all your workers lied, and you say, hey, can you get this job for me? They're like, yeah, I'll do it by 2:00. And they lie. I mean, so we have to have a society based upon the wanting to be honest with each other, right? The wanting to be rational. And this is, again, I think a lot of times why my detractors try to attack my credibility so much, because I think they recognize that as well. If we can show Steve lied, then all his arguments must be wrong, which clearly doesn't fucking follow. I mean, I can be Pinocchio. Right. My arguments still stand, right?
I mean, I said that to somebody on Twitter. I think it was in the exact same thread you referenced earlier when I was, I think I shut down that thread with Cheshire. I'm not sure if it's still going. I'm pretty sure we shut it down. But somebody who said, like I was saying, somebody said, like, who cares about this guy? Forget him. And I'm like, well, he could still have come up with a good argument. Like I'm still totally leaving the door open that he could. Just because he's the
one I muted, I didn't block him. I muted him. That guy.
I think so.
The one that wouldn't answer a single question.
Right.
Yeah.
Like he can come up with a good argument, I guess. I mean, I didn't say it, but I'm not going to say he can't.
Yeah, but why would I waste my time with somebody who won't answer questions? Right. I answer questions. Ask me a question, I'll answer it. Right.
Well, I mean, that's like a value judgment. How much is your time worth?
True. That's actually axiology. Yeah.
Yeah, and my time apparently is pretty worthless, so I'll stick around, I guess.
Yeah. Where's Chesh? She needs to do her happy ass. By the way, we had a discussion on Twitter whether her ass is a fungible commodity. I argue no, because to have a fungible commodity, you need to have one more you have to have at least more than one ass, right? Fungibility means that you can trade one amount of a quantity of something for the same amount of quantity, right? Dollars, bills are fungible. Money's fungible.
Sure.
Gold is fungible. But her ass, if there's only one ass, is it a fungible commodity? Because you can't trade it for anything.
But can she like sell it over and over again?
Right, but you have to be able to trade one ass for another ass, right? If there's only one of them, if I only had $1 bill, it's not fungible. I can't convert it to another dollar bill.
I think that for a long time, the world's like oldest profession has quantified how much you can charge for an ass.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I might be able to convert her ass into like gold or something. I mean, but the fact there's only one ass, I don't know. Does that make it fungible?
You just gotta start a line.
I don't know. It's not a good economics question. To me, fungibility means that you have to have a commodity that can be able to be exchanged for a similar product or the same product, right? And if you don't have the same product, I don't know if that's considered to be fungible.
I don't know because I have no idea.
We have to ask Undoom, the now converted Marxist, because Undoomed is now again a Leninist Marxist, social justice, Islam, Jehovah's Witness. I think that was the other thing he's going to revert to today.
And you have a super chat.
Yay!
It's not me. It's from Quisa.
Yay!
He says, Mr. Sirius shut down the Twitter thread. It's proof Steve hires stooges, which is exactly what they accused me of. They said that Steve summoned me, and I thought it was hilarious.
I summoned you. I don't recall that. Yeah, I mean, this is no disrespect, but I don't need to summon anybody for these types of discussions. I don't need that much help. I mean, I do okay. The reason I tag somebody is usually I want them to, and by the way, I didn't tag you, but I want, that's in my recollection, did I? But even I did.
You did, but after I got there.
Okay, yeah, if you're already in the thread. But it's more of entertainment value, right? I mean, I was like, hey, come watch this. This is like, some crazy ass shit here.
Yeah, that's what I told him. I'm like, hey, look, I'm here for me. When I get involved in dumpster fires, better believe I'm there for my own entertainment.
Now, I get tagged in. People tag me all the time on Twitter. Hey, talk to Steve. In fact, Matt gets tagged into the same threads I'm in. And I'm like, that must annoy the shit out of him because I haven't blocked. He has me blocked. And he usually ends up probably blocking people that tag him in any thread with me. But it's like, what is Matt going to save you? No. Sorry.
Yeah, right.
Good luck with that. Well, Matt will destroy you. Really? He's had his opportunity. Aaron will
he still
destroy
has
you.
the opportunity.
Okay.
I mean, I really wish they could come on here, one of them, or go on the non-sec when it comes back.
Possibly, maybe. No, I don't know.
I mean, I'm okay not saying a word to him. I just kind of would like to hear, like, if they came in and took down your entire argument, I think that would be awesome.
Would it?
Because, yeah, right? And like, because right now you're kind of, I mean, your argument when it comes to the atheist agnostic thing, I think it seems the most reliable. It has explanatory value, So I lean on it because I don't know. I think you know better than me, and I'm not, you know what I mean? You're my source on that. But if he can come in and destroy it, then that just increases my knowledge going forward.
Now, Human Affection had asked, agnostic is the term for not claiming knowledge, which it's not. What is the term for claiming knowledge? Well, agnostic is not relating to knowledge in this particular case. Agnostic is relating to ontology. So agnostic would be somebody who says the proposition, I don't hold a truth value either way, right? So if you claim knowledge, people call that Gnostic. I don't particularly like it, but it's not horrific, right? Gnostic, to me, is really dealing with Gnosticism, which was a second century form of movement, right? Of debate that they believe they have some kind of divine knowledge or hidden knowledge from God or some spiritual entity. But if you want to call that Gnostic, okay, fine, whatever. I'm not going to die on that hill. So a person who says I'm a Gnostic atheist would be somebody who says that they believe that gods don't exist and they're asserting it as a knowledge claim. There's nothing nonsensical about that, so that's why I don't really care on that particular phraseology. You'll find it mentioned very, very, very small mention in SEP by Dr. Draper. He calls it atheistic Gnosticism, I believe, though. But even he says, not explicitly, but you can kind of say that people really knew these terms. They probably wouldn't use them the way that most people do, because I don't think you usually conflate or juxtapose the epistemology with ontology. But it's, again, not a hill I'm willing to die on. If somebody wants to say that they're a Gnostic atheist, okay, I can really only interpret that I think, one way, right? Somebody who says that they believe that there are no gods, and also could say there's no, they know it. By the way, I can only interpret that one way to be rational, right? If somebody says, well, I lack a belief, but I know gods don't exist, what the hell does that mean? Wait, you lack a belief that there are no gods? But
before we get like, there's I gotta pause the conversation for a second, because there's something that you're bringing up that, like, somebody told me this a while ago, and I kind of just thought he was being an ass. But apparently that's the case. See, I thought agnostic and Gnostic were like moral and amoral. Like, you just put an A in front of it, and it's the opposite.
No, matter of fact, if you go to Wikipedia, it actually tells you don't make that mistake. It actually says on when you look at agnosticism, it says don't confuse, not to be confused with Gnosticism.
Agnostic, see, I thought he was being an ass.
No, agnostic. He wasn't
being an ass.
Think about it. The word agnosticism was coined by Thomas Henry Huxley, right? And the reason he coined it was was an approach to a methodological approach to determining the truthness of something, right? It was an approach. It was called a normative epistemic principle, very similar to scientific methodology. It was like the precursor to scientific methodology. That's how he coined the term agnosticism. It had nothing freaking to do with knowledge. However, there is something that can be drawn out of that called the epistemological proposition, which is the proposition of the knowability of gods. Can gods be known? These are antiquated uses of the term, though, and they're not normative. The normative term for agnosticism is nothing related to knowledge. It is a position about ontology. It's a belief about a belief that you suspend judgment on the position of God's existing. So when somebody says they are agnostic on P, they're not saying they have any knowledge one way or another. They're not talking about knowledge. Agnostic on P means I have no position either way on it. And you'll find this outside of philosophy as well. It's not just in philosophy. You'll it doesn't matter where it is. If a car mechanic says, "Hey," you ask a car mechanic, say, "Do I need new brakes?" And they say, "Well, I haven't looked at it yet." They're agnostic on that proposition. They don't know. I shouldn't say they don't know. They don't have a belief either way whether you need new brakes or not. Right? They're agnostic on it.
They'll find a way for you to need new brakes.
Oh, of course, but I'm saying that it doesn't necessarily have to be in philosophy. The term agnostic, but that's what it is relaying to people, right? There's, again, what do we mean by uses of words to convey something? To say you're agnostic is not relating a knowledge thing. It's just saying that I don't have a position either way. That's all.
So when it comes to, like, I keep seeing the words agnostic and Gnostic kind of thrown together always in, like, terminology. Would that be problematic, you think?
Well, I mean, like I said, if somebody wants to say they're Gnostic with respect to the proposition of God existence, I know what they mean by it, and I don't really know any other way to interpret that. So there's not so much vagueness to it, right?
Is there a better word to be like the opposite of agnostic that they could use that wouldn't sound so much like agnostic?
Well, no, and here's the reason why. Agnosticism would be a psychological state. Right? Atheism and theism are not psychological states normatively. They're propositional states. Right? So it's not the belief that I have some kind of actual psychological condition. That's not, when people talk about atheism and theism in philosophy, that's not normally what they're talking about. They're not talking about a psychological state. They're talking about a propositional state. Agnosticism is not a propositional state. You don't want it to be a propositional state, right? Because first of all, what would it mean for agnosticism to be right or wrong or true or false? Agnosticism is a psychological state. The reason why we don't want theism or atheism to be psychological states is because psychological states cannot be tested by argumentation, right? What would it mean to be true or false about a psychological state? It doesn't make much sense to think about those things. It's true whether you have that psychological state or not, but I can't really test by argumentation whether you hold a psychological state or not. Why am I going to test whether you actually do have that state or not? But I can test propositions. If I say God exists, that proposition, in theory, could be tested somehow by argumentation. Well, why do you hold that belief that the proposition is true? Because it is the case that the proposition is either true or it's false, right? It's one or the other. There's no middle ground to be had there. Law of excluded middle, right? The proposition itself is true or false, period. It's either the case that is true or it's either the case that is false.
So it involves like things that you could prove outside of the mind. I mean, of course, like Gnosticism, you can't prove because it's inside of the mind only, basically. There's nothing There's no way to know one way or another what's going on in somebody's head.
Yeah, and why would you want to? Why would I don't care about what your psychological states are. I want to know what your disposition is with respect to the proposition.
Sure.
Yeah. So human affection says none of this actually touched the point that using the term agnostic in reference to something that, by all accounts, is supernatural and evident is pointless. Not all. I don't even know what you mean by that. We'll use Matt Dillahunty's gumballs. If I say human affection, I'll just say human. If I have a jar of gumballs right in front of me right now, okay, and let's say I'm telling you there's some amount of gumballs in here, right? Some quantized number of gumballs, and I say, do you believe they're even? You're gonna, to be rational, you would say, well, no, I don't hold the belief that they're even. And I say, well, do you believe that they're odd? Well, no, I don't have the belief that they're odd. You're agnostic on those propositions. You're agnostic on the number of gumballs in the jar, right? You don't say that they're even. You don't say they're odd, although it is one or the other. The number of gumballs are either even or odd, but you don't have a stance on it either way. So what's your position on the proposition of there being even? I'm agnostic on that proposition. Whether it's supernatural or not evidential, whether you can actually see that gumball, you don't even have to, you can't see the gumballs right now. It is not pointless. It is actually quite just the opposite of pointless. When we're talking about the concepts of God, I want to know what somebody means by they say they believe in God, or they don't believe in God, or they believe gods or don't exist. These are conversations that the Great Debate has had for thousands of years. That is the Great Debate question. Does God exist?
And it's the difference between throwing out like a positive belief claim and not. Because if you say that I don't believe blank, that doesn't really say anything except for you could believe everything except for blank. It doesn't really say anything.
Oh, it's vague. Yeah. If I say Mr. Sirius, I want you over for dinner tonight, and I say, what do you want to eat? And you say, I don't want chicken. Wow, great, thanks. That's really informative. That's helped me out. That really tells me your positions, right?
Well, actually, if I said that, you would know that I was actually like a pod person, and you should probably kill me.
Yeah, but you see how it's when people just say like I don't believe. Okay, great, you have unbelief. Whatever.
Yeah, it doesn't do anything.
It doesn't tell me what your positions are. I want to know what your positions are. Now, I mean, not believing is a position. I'm not saying it's not, but it's like if I say, well, you're the theist or you're not a theist. That's true, right? But if I just say I'm a not theist, okay, great. But what does it really tell me? Okay, it tells me I don't believe in God, but it doesn't tell me what any of my positions are with respect to that. Just like if a theist says I'm a theist, okay, do I really know anything about them though? Now, don't get me wrong. It is telling me they have a belief, so that's true. Good. I'm not trying to discount that, but you don't see many Christians going around just saying, "Hey, I'm a theist." What they say is I'm Christian. Why?
Right. Because
Christian is a subset of theism, which is more descriptive and more conveying to the person what they want the person to know about their beliefs. Theism only tells them about one particular belief. Christian tells them there's a set of beliefs that's probably attached to that, right? It's much more informative.
But if they said they were a Christian, then you could, I guess, assume that they were a theist.
So Perfect One says it was coined by Thomas Huxley when he was referencing science rejection of revelation. God, Gnostic is about revelation, and the negation of a prefixes and getting revelation. Well, sort of, kind of. He was at a party, and his expression was that he felt like a fox without a tail, right? And he thought that the Gnostics, the people that had divine revelation, right? He felt the modern theist and the atheist were very similar to those Gnostics. He felt that they had no justification to say one way or another whether God existed or not as knowledge or belief, right? So he rejected the theist and the atheist, right? That's why he came up with the term. Now, the A in agnosticism is what's called Greek alpha privative, right? It is the negation of the proposition. It doesn't necessarily have to be that Greek alpha primitive could be without too, but in this particular case, a theos is referring to the negation of the proposition that God exists. So I mean, prefix says Steve is just talking nonsense. Well, okay, this is pretty common. I don't know why that you think that's nonsense. If you can go read the history of the coinage of that term, that's where it's from.
Well, yeah, I had somebody actually explain what you explained to me years ago, and I just looked at him. I thought, this guy's just being an ass.
Yeah, he says, no, not believing something is simply not embracing a proposition. It's not a proposition in itself. It is a second order proposition. it is the case that I suspended judgment. That is a proposition. Right? So
It's not a first order.
It's not a first order. No, agnosticism is a second order belief about a belief. Right?
Right.
So if I say God exists and I don't have a position on the true or falsity of that, but I have a second order position that I've said I've suspended judgment with respect to the proposition, then that actually could be propositional. It is true that I've suspended, I have suspended judgment. That is true or false, right? There's a proposition to be had there.
Sure.
Right. But not believing is a dichotomy between believe and not believe, right? There's one or the other. You believe or you don't believe, right?
Mm-hmm.
But don't believe doesn't mean that you hold a particular position with respect to belief that God doesn't exist, but the converse holds. If I believe there are no gods, I don't hold a belief that there are gods, right? So I don't know why he thinks I'm talking nonsense. This is completely basic, simple logic. I mean, it's just because you have an ontological case that it is the case that God exists or does not exist, does not necessitate that you are a theist or an atheist, right?
Yeah, if I could try to explain your P not P thing in like layman's terms, if you believe that God exists, that also means that you have a second order belief that you do not believe that there are no gods. Like kind of double negative.
I wouldn't phrase it that way because because you have an unbelief doesn't make it a second order. The reason you have a second order is because I've suspended judgment, right? I have an actual thing that I've done. I've suspended judgment on the proposition. I have a belief about belief that I don't have the ability to make a conscious decision. That is my belief. That I don't have the ability to decide between the truth veracity of the proposition being truth or false.
Sure. I was talking about it just if you have confirmations on the first order and what it means. And then I was going to get to, if you don't, then you can have two second order beliefs that would then equal you to be agnostic.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect is talking about he's talking about agnosticism as a normative epistemic principle, right? Because he says the proposition of agnosticism is it is ethically wrong to develop beliefs in or claim to know things which cannot be justified scientifically to others, which is exactly what I said when I started this, right? Did I not say that Huxley's initial usage of agnosticism was a normative epistemic principle similar to scientific methodology? Hello? I just said that, like 20 minutes ago. But that's not how the word is used nowadays, okay? We don't use agnosticism as Huxley's normative epistemic principle. Okay? When we say agnosticism,
what's wrong with language.
It changes. This is why it's important to understand what we mean by what we're trying to convey to somebody. When I say I'm agnostic, or that I hold the agnosticism, I'm not conveying to somebody that I hold the Huxley's normative epistemic principle, right? That's not what I'm conveying. That's not what you find in the literature. Now, granted, Dr. Draper, when he wrote for SEP, he was talking about more of Huxley's approach. But he even says in there, though, for the rest of this purposes of this article or paper, whatever he used, I'm going to be talking about the Huxleyan approach, which is fine. He's allowed to do that. But that's not normative. I mean, that's not what we mean by we say that I'm agnostic. And according to even Draper, agnosticism is a psychological state of being agnostic on the proposition, and agnostic on the proposition is the position where you don't believe the proposition is true and you don't believe the proposition is false. That's straight out of Stanford Encyclopedia, and many other sites will have something very similar. Right? So I don't know where he thinks that I'm having a disconnect here.
Well, maybe perfect. Sorry, perfect. Maybe read the Huxley thing recently and is going by the last thing that he read, which I can understand, but
you see, real quick, you see that the word they used was nonsense, though. It wasn't like, well, I think Steve is wrong. Let me explain why. I'm going to try to degrade or deride Steve and kind of drag him or somehow and say, look, he's just talking bullocks. He's talking nonsense. Okay, that's a time that to me is more of a personal affront than just saying that I'm merely wrong and let me explain to you why. Because if I was talking nonsense, then why is it for several fucking years I've had people, actual experts come in, we've had these conversations, and not one of them has ever said that. Not one expert has ever said you're talking nonsense, Steve.
Oh, they email me about that all the time.
Those goes in my spam folder.
Oh,
so
they're
I mean,
what's wrong with Steve? He's talking nonsense.
But you see how they try to throw these words out there to try to attack my character rather than track the argument? This is exactly what I've been pointing out with people. It's ubiquitous and it's notable. And I have people messaging me going, "Hey Steve, you see what they wrote on you on the atheist community of Austin or webpage or whatever, or like on this video by the Atheist Experience. I'm like, no, I don't watch. But occasionally I get somebody who messages me, and I'm like, God, these people are fucking stupid. And I'm like, well, this is what I've been trying to tell people. They're not as open-minded as they think. They don't really want to talk about these topics. And if you mention any of my arguments, they'll say, "Oh, you're Steve Sycophant." No, I don't even know half these people. You ask me fuck all about Mr. Sirius. I know very little about him. We're not like buddies. I mean, I like the guy. He's a friend online, but I've never hung out with him in real life. I don't have go to drinks with him. I probably would like to. I think it'd be cool to hang out with, and I'd like to get him know it better. But I don't call him up every day and go, "Mr. Sirius, man, you got to jump on this, man. You got to go do this and that." Nothing's like that,
Yeah, we just keep matching on Grindr.
Yeah, well, that's true. I think we make a perfect couple, except for the fact that I'm straight. Yeah,
Oh yeah, that would hurt things. Me too, though.
Yeah.
So it's weird.
I don't know. Is that something you work around?
I don't know. We'll have to work on that.
Yeah.
I don't know if Sweet would mind.
She don't give a shit. She's like Steve. Yeah, whatever. If I say Sweet, I'm going gay, she'd be like, cool. Got a video?
All right. Oh yeah. Well, really?
I don't. Why not? I don't know. Yeah, I know we've talked, Burflicht. He said He said, Steve, we have talked. You've had no response to my arguments. Then you know the problems with what you're saying. No, I don't know the problems with what I'm saying, and I have responded what you just said.
I mean, I haven't exactly heard a response from what you said. He just keeps going on and on.
I
don't know.
I'm not seeing any problems with what I've just said, nor has anybody that has read any about the stuff would see a problem with what I just said.
Okay, his previous phrase has tons of big words in it, so I'm going to read it. Maybe if you hear it,
Go ahead.
It might sound like an argument. All right, here we go. Yes, if the proposition is embraced while examining the God claim, it causes the individual to arrive at a separate and distinct theological position that is antithetical to both of the others.
Can you parse that maybe for me?
Parse it? I'm not sure what
if you embrace the proposition that if God exists, you're a theist, right?
Right, yeah.
And if you reject the proposition, you're an atheist. Where rejection is the position of negation, that you accept that gods don't exist. But what happens if you don't accept nor reject it? You're agnostic on it, right? There's three epistemic statuses you can have in regards to epistemology here. You can believe the proposition, you can disbelieve the proposition, or you can suspend judgment on the proposition. If I believe the proposition, we call that theism. If you reject it or disbelieve the proposition, which is basically belief in negation, you're an atheist. If you suspend judgment and you don't have a belief or disbelief, a disposition toward proposition or nor negation, you're agnostic on it, right? So I don't see the problem here. Agnosticism is just not believing P is true and not believing P is false. This is straight out of, again, Stanford and many other sources say the exact same thing. I cite you papers on this if you really wished. So I don't know what I'm confused about. The proposition of agnosticism is different. He says the proposition of agnosticism, which was you were talking about, the proposition of agnosticism is about the knowability of gods, right? Can God be known is the question. So God is knowable would be the proposition of agnosticism, or God is unknowable, right? One or the other. I mean, if you're hard agnosticism, you would hold that gods are unknowable. If you're soft agnostic, you would hold that gods are knowable, right? So I'm also a soft agnostic in the epistemological sense.
Well, you said this is which you were talking about, but I remember you bringing that up in like one sentence, and then we got right back off that topic. So we weren't talking about that. I don't think, were we? Because otherwise, if we were, I'm confused.
No, because this is what I'm saying. I see people, and this is why I hate agnostic atheism, because they switch between epistemology and ontology a lot. T-Jump's thing. Well, you're conflating epistemology with ontology, which most of the time people don't, but here it seems to be the case. Stick within one schema, right? Don't be jumping around from, epistemology of, agnosticism proposition is the proposition of knowability of gods. Sure, great. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about the ontology of God existing. And on the ontological question, God exists, the agnostic suspends judgment on that proposition. They also suspend judgment on the negation. This is why it's the conjunction of not be P and not be not P. This is why it's logically that particular molecular phrase, right? The molecular structure, right, would be not be P and not be not P, because you don't believe P and you don't believe not P. So again, I'm
Yeah,
not saying that the argument that he's relating to me. And then he's just like, you know the problems which you just read. No, I don't. If I did, I would tell you.
Right, and then he says what we're talking about isn't what we're talking about. So I'm starting to think I know where the issue is, and that's not lying on our side, Mr. Perfect.
Yeah, I'm not being disingenuous by any stretch of the imagination, right? He's trying to imply that I'm somehow being disingenuous, I think, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess you would have to in order to somehow prove you wrong.
He can come in the Discord. It'd be so much easier. He says
it would be.
He says the proposition of theism is that some number of God exists. The proposition of atheism is that no God exists. Okay, sure. The proposition of theism is that at least one God exists. The proposition of atheism is that no God exists. Okay. The proposition of agnosticism is that it's ethically wrong to develop beliefs in or claim that no things cannot be justified scientifically to others. That's if you're again. That's only in the Huxley's epistemic normative principles, which we're not talking about. We're talking about epistemology. The proposition of agnosticism in epistemology is the knowability of gods. A hard agnostic would be somebody who holds that gods are unknowable. The soft agnostic or soft agnosticism would hold that they are knowable. So again, did you read my blog, Agnosticism 3 Ways? Because you might want to go check it out. I explained very clearly that there's 3 different ways you can really read into agnosticism. Huxley's normative epistemic principle as a epistemological proposition dealing with the knowability of gods, or the position where you have no position on the ontological existence of God. So
maybe he's a Huxley fan.
Sure.
It does us no good, though, because we're not talking about that.
Yeah, he says each of those produce a distinct theological position that is antithetical to the others. Not necessarily. No. The atheism and theism in this particular case are called contradictories. Okay, they are antithetical to each other because if theism is true, atheism must be false. If atheism is true, theism must be false. Right? They're contradictories. Both cannot be true. Both cannot be false. Okay, now contraries are different. Contraries both can be false. Right? Judaism and Christianity are contraries, right? It could be the case. It can't be that they're both true, but they can be both false. Right? That's the difference between a contradiction and a contradictory and a contrary. So atheism and theism are contradictories. One must be the case, the other must be wrong. But your beliefs are completely different, right? Your beliefs on that, right? You're the right or wrong on it. If you hold the belief that God exists and God doesn't exist, guess what? Your belief is false. Right.
I have a question about what he wrote that it's been sticking with me ever since he wrote it, but I haven't said anything about it. But I want to point it out, and you tell me if I'm on to something because I have no idea. All right, he wrote up here, which says the proposition of theism is that some number of gods exist.
At least one or more. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Now again, in the non-classical sense, let me clarify. In the non-classical, classical theism only allows for one god, the monotheist position.
The proposition of atheism is that no gods exist. Okay, I'm good. All right, now I'm going to stop right where I have an issue with this next line. The proposition of agnosticism is that it is ethically... All right, we're stopping there. Ethically? Where does that lie?
Well, that's according to Huxley.
Huxley
would have said that according to his normative epistemic principle. That would be completely in line with Huxley's position.
I can understand if he was trying to make some case about the proposition of theism is that it's ethically right to believe that the number of gods exists or something, but why is ethically tied to agnosticism?
Because Huxley's normative epistemic principle, he thought it was unethical to believe something without sufficient scientific reasons for it, right? This is why I said related to scientific methodology. It relates to Clifford's principle. Right? Clifford's principle in evidentialism is the position that it is unethical at any time or place to believe something without sufficient evidence to warrant that particular position. Right? I reject Clifford's principle, but it is an ethical consideration, right? And Huxley's view was, as a normative epistemic principle, there was ethical considerations to be had that theist and atheist were not justified to behold the particular positions, but I think he would have argued that there was an ethical consideration to be had there as well, because it didn't fall in line with science.
Well, I mean, maybe, but I'd feel a lot better if they were trying to make some kind of like 3-pronged like argument, and they all had this like we're in the same category. You got 2 that are about beliefs, and then you got 1 that's about ethics. And I don't think
Yeah, well, that's why
I-
you
it
jump.
doesn't-
That's why he's jumping all the place. That's why stick with ontology, right?
Yeah.
And so if you're sticking just with ontology, then agnostic is a position you don't have a position on God existence. There you go. Boom. Done. Simple. I don't know why these added layers of complexity that don't need to be there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of Huxley.
Well, I'm not. Well, look, I'm not. I don't hold to his normative epistemic principles either, because, and I know who does. Mr. What's it? A militant agnostic. You know him, right, from Twitter?
Maybe.
Yeah, he's a huge
see a lot of
agnostic fan, right? I mean, he's a Huxley fan.
Hmm.
I'm not. I don't hold that particular branch.
I mean, it just muddies it up. You don't just put out a 3-pronged kind of system and only put ethics in one prong of it. Either you put in all 3 or none. Those are your options as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. So I can't pronounce this Russian name. I'm very sorry, but he says, Steve, why would you combine your position on P with your position of not P? Isn't it easier to just stick to one? I don't know what that means. P always has a negation to it. P or not P, right?
Yeah, P and not P are the two.
That's a dichotomy. So God exists or God does not exist.
It's not really combining them. It's more like contrasting them, to be perfectly honest. You
Yeah.
really can't believe. You can't really have both of them at the same time.
Well, because here's the thing. If I say I don't believe the proposition that God exists, it could be one of two reasons, really, right?
Mm-hmm.
One reason is I believe there's no gods, or the other reason I have no position either way. I'm the person who shows the position either way, right? I don't, and so just by saying I don't accept the proposition to be true, I'm not telling you that I think the proposition is false, right? It could be one or the other. It's vague, right? That's why I don't like the vagueness of these things. When you just say, "Well, I don't believe you." Okay, so what's your position? Do you not believe me because you hold a position that's opposite, right? Or do you not believe me because you've suspended judgment on the proposition?
But wait, but what he's asking about, isn't that the two belief statements and not the not belief statements?
What do you mean?
Like you believe that there is a God, or you believe that there's no gods, right?
No, that's not an or. That's not a disjunction there, right? Because, I mean, you can have that as a disjunction, but what I'm saying is that's not exhaustive, right? I believe God exists, and I believe gods do not exist are not exclusive, not exhaustive. That's not a dichotomy. Because I can hold a position to neither, right?
Sure.
So, yeah. I believe and I don't believe are a dichotomy.
Oh.
That's where a lot of people get that confused. I believe proposition is, I believe P and I do not believe P. Those are jointly exclusive and mutually exhaustive, right? So that makes it to be a dichotomy. But I believe P is true and I believe P is false. While they are mutually exclusive, they're not jointly exhaustive. I can hold the position that I neither hold P as true and I neither hold P as false. That's why that's not a dichotomy.
I think Perfect might have said something correct.
Yeah.
Want me to read it?
Yeah, go ahead.
So then in 1869, Huxley introduced agnosticism, and it was recognized that it did produce a third theological position. What Steve is talking about as agnosticism does not account for any of that.
Because I'm not talking about Huxley's normative epistemic principles. I'm not a Huxley agnostic, man. He's not wrong, but that's not my position.
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct. Perfect. Correct. You did it. You cracked the case.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like he's arguing something that I'm not arguing.
Yeah, we're on two different planets.
This is like almost like I said, ignoranto elenche. It's like this is sure, okay, great. You're arguing something that showed that to be the case, and I agree with that, but that's not my position. I'm not a Huxleyan agnostic, man. I don't hold to Huxley's normative epistemic principles, so I don't take it as a third theological position.
Yeah, you got to understand the terms or that are being dealt with, like and before you know how to argue against them. You just can't put your view or terms on top of somebody else's and then argue that yours are the de facto. That's not how you do things.
Well, this was fun. I'm sorry that X's phone kind of crashed out. I was enjoying that.
Oh yeah, but that's okay. I think we had fun.
Yeah, this is great. No, this is absolutely great. I still want to, like I said, I like to know what people mean by these terms, and so I wish I had more people telling me what they mean by agnostic atheism, because again, I've heard so many different variations of what it could possibly mean.
Right.
So I would like to have one more come in and say, Oh, I'm an agnostic atheist. Okay, great. What do you mean by that? Well, I mean this, this, and this. Really? Okay, well, let's dive into that.
Right? I mean, where you get those terms from?
Well,
I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, your P not P log is very convincing. So
well, I
believe
appreciate that. The primer that I did, right? I think is pretty right on. I don't think anybody said that the logic's wrong on any of that. So when you go read my primer on agnosticism, atheism, and theism, it's generally just basic logic relating to these terms as used in the literature, right?
Mhm.
Now there are some
course I
variations. You know, I mean, like in Burgess Jackson's paper, he doesn't use not BP. What he uses is not BAP, where H stands for an agent, and he uses G actually, so it's not GAP. Now I'm not quite sure why he used G. I don't remember, but he has like atheism is the position of not G not GA not P. The agent doesn't believe the proposition. And again, I don't remember why he used G, but I recollect his paper. He used G as the predication. So, but
that's interesting.
yeah, I'm trying to remember why he did that. I have to look at that paper again.
You want to do it in third person or something?
Well, no, but I mean, like you can see like BSP, which is the subject believes P, BAP, the agent believes P. These are more indexical type things. For like a specific agent. BP just means believes P. It's not referring to any specific person, right?
Sure.
It's not saying the agent believes P or subject believes P.
Uh-oh. In philosophy, two propositions cannot exist in a dichotomous relationship because there always exists the possibility that an individual might not embrace either one. And another thing I think...
Hang on, no, those propositions are dichotomous. P or not P is a dichotomy.
Oh yeah, those are dichotomous.
Yeah. Now the beliefs about those are not dichotomous because, like you said, you may not embrace either one. You may not hold to either one, which is agnosticism, which is agnostic on the proposition God exists and agnostic on the proposition God does not exist. But the proposition God exists and the proposition God does not exist are dichotomous, right? One's the negation of the other.
Right, I mean, that would have to be the case that either gods exist or the gods that do not exist. There is no other possibility.
Yes.
Gods can't kind of exist or kind of not exist. I mean, they either do or they don't.
So where do you want to go with this? I mean, I'm kind of fading, and it's been rough these couple of days, man. I tell you, everybody seems so out of it. I mean, it's like the whole world has just stopped. Everybody seems lethargic.
We just need to do constant 24-hour marathons. No more sleeping.
I've done that before. I did 3 8-hour streams in a row one time a couple of years ago. Never again.
I'm too old to do that shit anymore.
Yeah, no, never again. That was hard.
Well, I think everybody is like starting to understand what it's like to be Mr. Serious for a while. And we're not really seeing a confident light at the end of the tunnel, and it sucks. Let me tell you, it sucks.
Yeah.
Everybody's life's interrupted. People don't know what to do. People don't know if they should go out and buy a million rolls of toilet paper.
I saw a meme today that reminds me of that. That says, and it's just funny. It was like, President Trump will always go down in history as a president that was so full of much shit that the country ran out of toilet paper.
That is hilarious.
I gotta admit, that's clever. Because it's true.
But I think that stuff like this is good. I don't have, I would just talk on my channel all day, every day. But I think, Rez might be the only person watching me, so...
Do you want to have a hangout later on this week?
I don't even watch your channel, dude.
Do you want to have one on speech act theory to go over the basics of what these things like what a commissive is, what an expressive is, what is a representative is, what a declaration is? I think it's kind of fascinating. I think maybe people might be interested in learning what it means to say, okay, I promise you this. Well, that's a commissive. If I say I declare this, then I declare you man and wife, right? That's a declaration, right? I'm actually performing as a performance utterance that's making it the case. Like when a priest says, "I declare you man and wife," that's changing the state of affairs of the universe, right? It declares something, right? And so because of that declaration, the mere utterance of a priest saying that the state of affairs in the universe has changed merely by a performance utterance. I love that kind of shit about speech act theory. So, because that gets your mind thinking, right? Holy shit! Just by saying something, I've changed something in the universe, right? Well,
Maybe.
if I have the empowerment to do so, you have to have the empowerment to do so.
So you just asking me if I want to do that, that could change something in the universe. I could be
you
doing
could change the
this.
entire state of affairs in the universe by a declaration if you're the empowerment to do certain things.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, if you ever want somebody who is layman into like be I guess your student to ask questions on behalf of the audience,
I would have to get
I'm
Ozzy
that
for
guy.
it. That's a deep subject, or somebody who knows speech act theory. Avery and who is Cyril? So Cyril and Avery is a big ones, but yeah, I mean, it's a weird thing to think that way, right? I mean, because the statement, like, let's say you were a priest and you say, you know, is Stephen and Rez married, right? Let's say that we were going to get married. And now you have the ability to say, well, I now pronounce you, Steve, and Rez married. The proposition Steve is married now becomes true.
Oh,
just because you've uttered it.
That's right.
Just because that's how it works in society, right? Because when you do a declaration like that with that certain empowerment, you've caused something to change. And I find out that shit fascinating because you don't think that words have meanings in that regard. You don't think that words have power, but they do.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Why is your go-to example always me, and why is it always comparing you?
Because
to me?
because when I'm looking at my screen, your name stands out more. Because I'm looking at my
Really?
Yeah. Because it's really short. It's just right there. It's right above my name.
I was
Well,
wondering
I mean,
if there wasn't some kind of psychological thing going on there.
I want you bad.
there was a Twitter a thing I saw that somebody had reposted it or retweeted it about people like asking, have you ever been sexually attracted to somebody's voice?
Yes.
Yeah. Have you met Karis? Karis?
Oh my God! She knows how I feel.
Yeah, I mean, she could make a gay man go straight in a heartbeat. Yeah, I just prefer.
I would marry her disembodied voice.
she's pretty too. She's smart, you know.
Oh yeah,
but yeah,
she's. I mean, that's just.
She has a lovely voice. Yes, she really does.
That's a bonus.
Yes,
the voice sells it all. The rest of it's a bonus.
Yes.
And should we? So
you want to do that? You want to speech act hang out one of these days?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I would love to do anything.
I'll do a slideshow. I'll do a presentation or something with somebody on it. Preflex says, if God and not God are dichotomous, which they are, relationship, then the law of excluded middle would apply. Well, the law of excluded middle deals with the proposition, right? The proposition God exists is either true or false. That's the law of excluded middle. That would mean that everybody would have to be one or the other. No. And he says, I don't think that was what you mean that. No, they don't. The belief,
yeah, they don't have to.
Yeah, the belief is different. Beliefs are not dichotomous, right? I mean, I don't have to believe one way or another. It is ontologically the case that God exists or God does not exist. I can say I believe God exists. I can say I believe God does not exist, or I can say I believe neither. Right? I don't have to hold. Yeah. Right? I mean, so
like I said, God doesn't ever kind of exist.
Yeah, it's either all or nothing, right?
Right.
But I don't have to have the belief that God exists, and I don't have to have the belief that God does not exist. I can hold the position that I don't have either belief, right? So that's not I believe God exists and I believe God does not exist are not dichotomous, as I keep trying to explain.
Right. The belief is not dichotomous. It's but the statements that God does exist and God does not exist, one of those has to be true.
Yes.
And one of those has to be false.
That's why atheism and theism are contradictory because one has to be true, the other has to be false. Which, by the way, is again why it makes no sense to say atheism is merely lack of belief, because then atheism cannot be true or false. Right? Atheism can only be true or false if it's a proposition. So
that's true.
Yeah. And or it can't be a psychological state either, because psychological states you don't hold to be true or false. What you hold to be true or false is a proposition.
Right.
So I read a paper not too long ago where the guy was he kept vacillating between atheism in the weak case and atheism in the strong case, and it was disconcerting because he was advocating, for a lack of belief position like Martin and Flew, but then he would say he would say a statement like, well, that would make atheism true. Well, you cannot say that would make atheism is true if you're you're using atheism in the weak case. Then you have an equivocation problem. You're making a huge problem in your paper because, and somebody else pointed this out too. It was another paper that I read on the review of that paper, but it's like, yeah, you can't do this, man, because you can't say I do not believe a proposition is something that's sure that itself is true or false. Either it's true that I don't believe, or it's false I don't believe, but in the weak case to say that atheism is true would make no sense if you're using atheism just to mean that you don't hold the belief.
Right. Belief statements can be true or false. Not belief statements can't be, right? Is that what you're saying?
Not believe, yeah, because if I say atheism isn't true, now I'm saying that it isn't true that I don't hold the belief, right? That I don't believe, or one way or another. It's weird to kind of say that. What would it mean to be atheism is true or false in the weak case, right? If atheism is merely you don't believe, what does that mean to be true or false? It means that you either do not believe, right? Or it's either it is correct that I do not believe, or that I do believe.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't relate to the ontology of God at that point. It relates to the psychological state. But if atheism is the belief that God does not exist, it is that in that particular case, the position is merely a disposition to the propositional content, where the propositional content is the state of affairs that God doesn't exist. That could be true or false. Right?
I'm going to get perfect real quick. One last time,
Sure.
I guess.
Go for it.
So, two philosophical propositions cannot exist in a dichotomous relationship because there always exists a possibility that an individual might not embrace either one.
You just said the same thing over.
Well, yes. So, yeah, God exists is not a philosophical proposition.
Yeah, it is.
God does not exist? Is it?
Yeah. It's a philosophical proposition. It's about ontology. Ontology is metaphysics. Metaphysics is philosophy.
I thought it was just.
It's not a psychological proposition, right? Because what would that mean? But the philosophical proposition of atheism is God does not exist. The philosophical proposition of theism is God does exist. Those are dichotomous. God exists or God does not exist. There is no middle ground there.
Okay, I am confused with my wording. Thanks for clearing that up. Okay, so, but it says two philosophical positions cannot exist in a dichotomous relationship. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Of course they can.
I mean,
P or not P?
Yeah. Yeah.
P or not P is dichotomous. That's a dichotomous relationship. P, God exists. P, not P, God does not exist. There you go. There is no middle ground between those things.
And these aren't like belief statements. Like I believe God exists and I believe God does not exist. These aren't that. These are the two states of like that have one of them has to be what is in reality.
Yeah, and your position on that could be multiple, right? I can say I don't care what I could be apathetic. I can have other positions with respect to the proposition where I don't hold the belief either way, right? But it is God exists or God does not exist. There's no middle ground there. But there is middle ground to whether I believe God exists, God does not exist, or I hold no position either way. There is middle ground. There's a third position there. This is where Matt Dillahunty gets confused because he's pulled this out. And he may know by now because it's been so long. But back when he like jumped into my thread and said, "Well, Steve, you either believe or you don't believe." Okay, great, yeah, sure. Nobody's arguing that, dude.
Mm-hmm.
He just happens to argue if you don't believe, you're by fiat an atheist, which is bullshit. But yeah, so I mean, I was trying to explain to him. Look, there's a middle ground between I believe P and I believe not P. There's a middle ground to be had there. But
right.
Maxie says, Steve, why is quote, it is not the case that P is more special than it is possible that P. Wouldn't it be good if P or any other modification of P? Why combine P with not P instead of any other one? Okay. It is possible that P is a modal statement. Okay. That's a modality, possibilities, necessity. When you say that it is possible that P, you're saying that P that it is some possible world P is true.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's what it stays modality wise, modal logic. Possible P implies that it is possibly the case that P is true in some possible world, and not in other possible worlds. Now, if I say necessity P, if I say by necessity or necessarily P, I should say, necessarily P means that P must exist in all possible worlds. That is a metaphysical necessity at that point. That's all. So that's not relating to it is not the case. It is not the case that P means in this possible world, this actualized possible world, God doesn't exist. But in some other possible world, he does, if God is possible. So by saying it is possible that P, where P is the proposition of God existing, it is, in essence, ostensibly saying God doesn't exist in this actualized possible world, but he does exist in some other possible world. Mind blown?
Yeah, Perfect still doesn't get it.
Can I just say, if Perfect is willing to extensively argue in this fashion, can they just come into the fucking Discord and make it easier on all of us?
I don't know. Sure, whatever.
I mean, we asked earlier.
And by the way, like we got Brian Stevens in the live chat, and he mentioned earlier, and I kind of glossed over it, but he's like he changed his position on a lot of this stuff because of me. He became a true Steve believer. Although, by the way, I actually remember back in the day where people were like, I don't believe you exist, Steve. And they really didn't understand what they meant by that. Because, like, I don't have any beliefs. I'm like, so you don't believe that I exist? No.
Yeah, right.
Okay, you're rational. Not.
Right. I think that people, like, it's one of those comfy belief things. I really, like, I put stock in my whole comfy belief hypothesis, where people are just, like, they'll find something to kind of base their entire existence around and believe it, and then like they'll try to build on that. So if it only makes sense for that, then they'll like add it to that, and like like flat earthers will do with any little thing that makes their thing more true, they'll add it to their belief system. But everything that doesn't is obviously false, instead of actually caring about what's true, because that doesn't matter.
Yeah,
it's the same kind of thing.
I've seen that.
It's like people say, I don't believe in anything. It's like it's a line that they heard somewhere. And that's just like one of those things.
But they think they're so smart by saying it. They're like, I am a critical thinker. No, you're an idiot.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you say to make yourself feel like you're smart or feel better, that you don't have to actually argue anything by saying something absurd.
Back in the day, that was prevalent on G+. Remember those G+ communities? I go into atheist versus theism, and I see it all the time. But Steve, I don't have any beliefs. Okay, fuck off. You're an idiot. You're literally having a performance contradiction per se about at least dealing with rationality, because you're talking to me. So you're talking to somebody that you believe you don't believe exists. That's irrational, dude.
I wonder if he really believes that he doesn't have any beliefs.
You know, it's like, really? I mean, hyperbolic, but man. By the way, I'm hoping some people start becoming more members. Get green, man. It's like $2 a month. Support the channel. I appreciate it. I'm working on some stuff. I've got ideas. I've got a lot of ideas I want to work on, but unfortunately, I can't right now. And I don't, because I don't want to do it on this channel. I want to take all my ideas I have for the Non Sequitur show and put it on that channel. So, Cheshire and I have been basically spinning our wheels together. Not as kinky as that sounds, but take it for what it's worth.
Yes, the Great Debate Community Discord.
It's
not hard to get into.
It's in the comments. It says Discord link to join. You can just click that and you come right in.
Yeah, that should be active. If not, I can put it in the. Live chat real quick. So
I am
use this one. This one I know works.
I'm disabled and I don't do anything. So if you ever want me for anything, just let me know. I'm always available.
Oh, I want you so bad.
Oh, well, I'm on my way.
Hey, Brian Stevens became a bingers. Thank you, Brian Stevens. Thank you, good sir. Yay. I'm shilling myself. Right. I don't ever do that. And by the way, become a member. One thing you won't have is member only chat. Not going to happen. Fuck you people that do that shit. You're greedy motherfuckers, man. Why would you have a chat just for fucking members? I'm sorry. That's not a perk of being a member. I don't even know why they even have that feature. Except for maybe shut it down with trolls, but come on.
And I would be a member if I could, but I am as broke as a joke, so that means somebody out there is going to have to do it for me.
Yeah, and Prefect is a member. I know who Prefect is. I've talked to Prefect before. He's not a bad guy. I mean, and he supports the channel, and I appreciate it. This is what I'm saying. He's more than welcome to come in, and we continue the conversation. And I'm trying to be as generous as possible to him.
Right. It's hard to do this when you have like a limited amount of text to type. Like I said, or like we said earlier, English or language in general kind of sucks. It's never going to be perfect. We're never going to get what we really mean across to other people, except for when Steve says he loves me. That's right on.
By the way, if you're going to catch me in a lie, that's probably it.
Fuck.
Yeah, join is like YouTube Patreon. There's a little join button down there, and you get green, and you don't have to worry about slow mode. And there's some other perks, like you get certain emojis. I don't even know what the hell I did with that.
I hate slow mode. I hate it.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you need it because when we have bigger, sometimes we can have several hundred people watching, and it's really confusing to
Well,
read
I
all
mean,
that chat.
I hate it for me. I don't hate it for everybody else. Can be on slow mode, sure, but
Yeah.
I don't like it.
But I like seeing green. It means that people are supporting. I mean, by the way, like I said, I still have my Patreon. I do talk to my patrons a lot. I do try to give them advance notice of things. I put these out there when I'm doing these things. I didn't this one, so my apologies for that. But so I'm very, very grateful for my supporters. I really am, and I appreciate the fact they've been bearing with me while we're spinning our wheels for all this legal shit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Perfect, I know that you've talked in person. I mean, I don't know that, but regardless of whether or not you have, great. I would just, like, you have a position and it's not the same as ours. And I don't care who anybody is or what they've done. If you have an argument that can beat what Steve is saying, I'd love for you to come in and whoop his ass. I would love for that to happen. So if you can just get in here and do that, that'd be great.
Do it, man. Do it. We want all to see this. Whoop my ass. Yeah, I mean, I've been doing this for years, and I've debated numerous people. And so far, I mean, I'm pretty well, I undefeated, I guess, in that aspect. I mean, at least unassailed. I think that's a better word of putting it. Nobody's assailed my arguments. And even people that have thought they did, I have on record, I have them writing to me saying, Steve, I have thought about this, and yeah, you're right. But then they go back in public and go, fuck Steve. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Really? You're going to sit there and tell me that all this time you argued against me. You finally realized I was fucking right in private. But in public, you go out and go, oh, nope, I'm going to be nasty to Steve because he's a big poopy head. Fuck you.
The worst part about you, Steve, is that you will realize when you're wrong and change your beliefs. So usually you're pretty up to date.
I do that frequently when people in the live check, they hold my feet to the fire. Like, hey, we think you fucked up here. Oh, okay, great. I mean, fix it. Okay.
Right.
Hey, that's the look. I don't think as a content creator you're expected to be right 100% of the time. I mean, I expect people to be, generally more correct than not correct for a large percentage of it. But a good content creator is not somebody who's right all the time. A good content creator says this is the best understanding of this, but if it changes, we're going to fix it and get you the most up to date on it, right? To make sure that you will be corrected on it. That to me is a good content creator. You know, ones that don't do that, they're shitty content creators. You know, people that do that, the ones that I probably don't watch, the ones that have, tried to vilify this channel and myself, the ones where have made false statements that have never corrected them.
And Perfect, I don't know if I speak for Steve, but I mean, this would be one of those
I'm on
things
Discord
that
right
would
now
be
if he wants to come in.
great to come on in front of an audience, and this could be a learning moment for all of us if you can just destroy Steve's argument.
Oh yeah, Brian Steven points out the only true one has never been defeated was Apologist Supreme. Yes, his record is 10,343 straight victories. Yes, him and G-Man. G-Man is undefeated as well. G-Man can't lose.
Yeah, of course.
G-Man always wins. So I'm no G-Man. I'm definitely no Apologist Supreme. He is unassailable. Yeah.
I'm personally amused by the fact that Perfect keeps telling you to come and find. You have to come and find him. Like, no, if he wants to participate, he has to join the channel.
Yeah, I don't go chasing people down. Look, I had that guy Discord Politics. He was from the ACA server. He drops in every so often, and he'd be like, "Hey, Steve, why don't you come into my server and have a conversation with the Darth Dawkins?" And I'm like, "Why? Well, you chicken? No, because he can come in here anytime he wants." But
we're right here right now.
I don't play that game with him anymore. I've done that before. Been there, done that. He's dishonest. And I don't care whether he has what?
Who's Christian in here and who's atheist?
I'm neither. So
I'm probably best described by agnostic, although I have some leanings toward agnosticism. It just fits in a different subcategory, I guess.
We've had hangouts on that topic.
An anti-theist.
Yeah.
Red's is straight up just fuck you all. Fuck religion. Fuck God. Yeah, he's a hater. He's a Satanist.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, Steve, you and I have had long discussions about that topic. It basically comes down to the fact that I don't think the definitions are well thought out enough for the position to even make sense.
Yeah, you tend to agnosticism, and we've talked about it before. I remember you actually came on and we had a special hangout, if I remember correctly, on agnosticism.
Almost several years ago. I think.
It's been a long time.
Yeah.
I remember. I try to remember, even though I have 1,000 videos. But yeah, I do remember that particular discussion. And I still have my reservations on agnosticism. I really do.
I do as well for some ways. Like people sometimes fall into the category or self-describe as it, and they don't necessarily understand what they're saying.
Yeah. Well, here's my thing. And I get your positions. You do articulate it, fairly decently. I'm not saying that you don't, but I have had people that subscribe to what they call ichtheism or agnosticism, and then they start for hours talk about God, and it's like, wait a minute here. I thought you don't think that the God discourse has any kind of cognitive meaning. Yet here you are spending hours talking to a theist. I don't know. That makes no sense.
Yeah, I try to get a sense of what they're conveying, and up until I can try to get my handle on it, I have an issue because the definition's too vague to really address. And the vague definition always ends up as unfalsifiable. So I don't know where to go with it,
But I don't think falsification has any relevancy. That's only something you'd find for proper criteria for scientific theory, which some scientists don't even accept. So I don't think that has any relevancy to the beliefs, whether it's falsifiable.
Oh no! If you're trying to come at it from like a pure philosophy perspective, and you're not looking at evidentialism basis or something, then you're going to be looking at it a completely different way.
Sure.
I don't think there's a way to approach it from that. I haven't seen any solution to the problem.
Well, Oppie argues, and again, I'm not convinced by Oppie's argument, and I'm a big fan of Oppie. So for me to say I'm not convinced by his argument, it's saying something. But he puts ichtheism under just a form of strong atheism, and I'm not quite sure that I understand his argument to even.
I would say it's like almost atheism, but without being able to make the final step from agnosticism, because you need a proposition to be able to argue for, and they're stating that they don't have that, so it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I'm trying to figure out why Perfect thinks I have to go chase him down somewhere. I'm not interested in that.
Yeah, to be perfect.
Can I just say, if you're gonna have that attitude about it, that's called pussying out. Either put up or shut the fuck up.
Oh, I love when people say that about me, like I'm a pussy, and I'm like, Steve will go into politic discord or something like that. I'm like, and that makes me a pussy. Okay, maybe we have very different understandings of these terms, because I've been doing this for fucking years, and I invite people to have contradictory positions. Come on and have a chat. What the fuck? I mean, like, what else do you want from me? But I'm not going to go to Darwin's deity Discord. I'm sorry. He's just not an honorable person. He's just not somebody I want to have a conversation with, because he's not an honest interlocutor. And if I do, it's sure the fuck is it going to be on his home court? No, never again. Been there, done that. Don't do it. It's stupid. He needs to man up and have some balls and come in here like anybody else does. Is he saying that Mr. Sirius somehow has more balls to come in here than Darwin's deity? Yeah, he probably does, right? Because Darwin's won't even come in here.
My balls are pretty immaculate, I must admit.
The way I approach that kind of thing is I'm willing to go to a third party's location, provided that they're not like in bed with the person.
Yeah, no, I'll talk to Darwin's on the ACA. I probably wouldn't have a problem with that. Yeah.
Well, going to their home court is like inviting them to mute or boot you.
Yeah, it's not worth it. But if I'm on the ACA Discord and I know IX is there, and Darwin's comes in, which I don't think that he does, but let's say that he did. I know he's banned from the server, but if he did, I wouldn't care. I'd be like, okay, let's chat, Darwin, because I know that IX is going to force him to answer certain questions, right? I know he's not going to be able to equivocate. He's not going to be able to gallop. He's not going to be able to dodge my questions, because I'm going to appeal to the moderator. And what's going to happen? Darwin's is going to get, pissy and then leave. That's all he's ever done. So
I've got to say something too Perfect before he leaves, I guess, if he's still listening.
Yeah.
Look, we have an audience here, and we're trying, this is a kind of a learning stream. Like, we're trying to teach things if people wanted to learn them, and that's kind of what this whole thing is for. And if you think that we have gotten something wrong, great. Like, we would love to have it corrected, but it's not.
You're roboting out. Uh-oh. Is that him or is that me? Is he roboting, or is like everybody's roboting? Outside chat, can you give me some feedback here? Because it sounds like he's roboting to me, and I don't know if it's on. Can you guys hear me? Am I roboting?
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, you were for a moment, but I can hear
Okay.
you.
I think everything's starting to come back now. For a minute there, everyone sounded like R2D2.
Yeah, Discord.
Yeah, all I
Oh.
could
Discord's
do
being
was
taxed right now.
roboting.
Discord's being used pretty heavy, I guess. So,
Yeah.
you know.
Oh shit! Did I disconnect while I was in the middle of saying
Yeah,
that?
you were like,
Yeah.
Oh well, let me try that
Learn.
again.
learn.
Perfect.
Yeah.
This is a learning environment. This is where we do the learning. If you can correct something, this is where it's going to happen. It's not about Steve following you so you can go get your rocks off somewhere in private. That's not what this is about. This
Who
is a learning
says?
environment.
Okay.
So you come in here, you correct Steve, and we learn,
Yeah.
or fuck off.
Yeah. Well, and by the way, like Brian Stevens, I mean, not to like call him out too much, but
He
we
just
disagreed on
made the
something, and I was able to convince him otherwise, right? He's changed his position on it, but he could have convinced me, right? He could have, right? But I think that he was at least ballsy enough to go, hey, Steve, let's talk about this, and he changed his position on it. And by the way, I will myself too. I've changed my position if somebody gives me, sufficient reasons where I have to think about it, and I go research it, and I go look it up, and I ponder it. Like, for example, when Malpass was telling me what his arguments were with William Lane Craig, I didn't understand it that much at the time. I told him, I said, let me ponder this for a while. I had to go over what he wrote several times to be able to explain it in my blog. Okay? So we like to be able to digest things. We like to be able to evaluate things. We like to be able to say, okay, if you think I'm wrong on this, let's look at what you're saying. Why am I wrong? Show me the logic. Show me your citations. So let's try to suss out with the reasoning, right? He says, yeah, it's all about the money. I made $5 for the last 2 hours, dude. I'm making $2.50 an hour. Yeah, it's all about the big motherfucking bucks, ain't it?
And not only that, he seems to be overestimating the amount of value he's going to bring to this conversation.
Yeah, you might cost Steve money, buddy.
I make $2.50 an hour. Yes. So no, it's not about the money because I ain't making fuck all from this. I have 50 people watching, man. I have one super chat. I get nothing from these videos anymore as far as monetization because they all get demonetized pretty much because I curse. So that doesn't hold.
Yeah. And who's he even talking to? I'm the one who called him out, just now. Who's he even
And
fucking
me.
talking to? How much money am I making?
Yeah.
What's my cut, Steve?
Yeah,
How much? Tell everybody.
That's what I'm saying. When people say like, well, they do stuff for views. Okay, first of all, any YouTuber does things for views. So the difference is they either do it honestly or they do it dishonestly. I do it honestly. I don't like using clickbait. I mean, sure, I'll be funny sometimes, and we all use a little bit of clickbait for funsies. And nothing wrong with that, right? But there are people out there that use absolute clickbait. They'll throw my name in something that has nothing to do. Hey, we're going to talk about CV19, Steve McRae exposed.
Yeah.
Of course.
Every day. No, there's a video about me every day on YouTube. Not even joking. I don't watch any of them, but I see them come up and I'm like, oh, another video on Steve. Great, whatever.
It's not just YouTubers, though. Like, anybody that wants to convey information to an audience is automatically going to want to do it for views. That's the point. It's stupid to have a problem with that.
Yeah, but again, this could be streamed to somebody in the channel and I wouldn't give a fuck.
Yeah.
It's still the same conversation, right? I could take this off
Yeah,
there
no,
right now and I want
it's
people to
such a
learn.
comment.
I'll stream it to Mr. Series' channel. I don't give a shit. Let him get some super chats. I've given away so much. It's
Ooh, I
ridiculous.
can't get super chats. I have 12 subscribers.
Okay,
Peon.
Steve, I think we can write this guy off as a fuckwit because look.
Well, no,
what he
I've
just
talked to the
wrote.
guy before. He's
It
usually
is
pretty,
not about the amount.
He's usually pretty.
Hang on. What?
Yeah, go ahead.
How is it not about the amount? You could do literally anything for more money than this. Like,
I could be sucking dick right now and probably be making $100 an hour, man.
Not from me.
200 from him. He's a good tipper. Yeah, I really, it's really bizarre when people have said that throughout that little, was it idiom, well, Steve does things for views. Well, first of all, like I said, every content creator does things for views, but when have I ever done anything dishonestly for views? When have I made drama up for the sake of drama, like drama creators do? This is not a drama channel. And people say, well, how can you say that? You've had drama on your channel. No, what I've had is responses to dramas. I've never fabricated anything. I've never made anything up just to have narrative so we can have content. Never, not once. Yet other content creators, that's all they fucking do. Anybody who uses my name, every single one of them probably is creating drama just so they think they can get some views. By the way, I don't know why my name carries less weight. If you get 50, 100, 200 views because you use my name, aren't there a billion content creators out there that probably would give you more? I don't know what the sick fascination is with me. I really don't. There's a bizarre psychological thing going on the internet that people have to talk about me, and I don't know why. I don't get it. I don't care. I don't watch their shit. Let them have it. They'll get their 50 to 100 views. Great. But it is psychologically disturbing to think that I am somehow that much of an influencer that people have to talk about me. And every time when people message me and go, hey, such and such to this, what the fuck are they talking about? I don't know. I don't care.
Yeah, I've been so disengaged from the whole thing that I wasn't actually aware that was happening until I overheard conversation about it in some other channels.
Yeah.
And then I saw you mentioning shit happening on your Facebook feed, and I was like, oh, this has been going on for a while.
Years.
And I didn't.
Years, dude. I mean, you can ask Tina in the live chat. How often do people talk about me, Tina, when I have no idea the fuck what they're talking about nor care? And 99.99% of the time, it's probably absolutely 180, 100 degrees wrong. And the 0.1% that's probably right is taken completely out of context. But they do what do you mean they have nothing else to stream about? That's what it boggles my mind. There's an infinite number of subjects in the world. There's billions of people out there doing videos, millions of content creators, and they want to talk about me? Am I that much on their brains all the time?
Steve,
did I hurt them?
Require them having integrity and a brain.
It's like show me on the doll where Steve hurts you, because it's like I'm flattered that people have spent this much time trying to character assassinate me for years, and yet I still have a following, and I still have people that that like. Dr. Zayas, $5. Thank you. Now, oh, by the way, thank you, Dr. Zayas. Now I'm making $5 an hour. Yes, yes, I'm moving up.
You're not quite up to minimum wage yet.
He says Steve deserves to raise to $5 an hour. That was his. I actually said that before I read the super chat. Yeah, so I'm up to $5 now. I did the math in my head, by the way, but he's right. Yes.
Can I reply to perfect again?
Yeah, I'm rich, bitch. Fuck off.
All right. Additionally, you are insisting that you get to control the environment while insinuating that you cannot trust
I didn't
me.
say that.
That does not engender trust. We can set up a place to talk we both agree on. Look,
we literally said that
I said I go on the ACA all the time if you want to go in there. I don't care, but the problem with the ACA is it's not streamed. And I like to have these conversations streamed, not for my own benefit, for people listening, so they learn something, so they get something out of it. And the ACA doesn't stream unless you're in one of the channels. I think you can, and then we'll pick a channel that you can stream to. I don't give a shit.
They're just trying to squirm their way out of being on air for it.
But I don't know why I control the environment. I mean, do you see me muting anybody? I haven't muted anybody since I've been here.
This is not Darth Dawkins' channel where everybody gets muted immediately.
Oh wait, what I'm saying. Sorry, say that again, Rez.
This is not Darth.
Oh, I just server muted the bitch. Fuck you.
Yeah, fuck Rez. What a jerk.
All right, I'll leave. It's fine.
Okay, I don't follow.
Steve server mutes. He did it to Rez.
I mean, this whole conversation.
Dawkins? Is that actually Dawkins? What are we talking about? I have no context for this.
Darth Dawkins, yeah.
No, it's a different. It's not Dawkins. It's a
Darth Dawkins.
Darth Dawkins is a.
Oh, sorry, no.
Darwin's deity.
I see.
Darth Batman. I forget.
No, Batman's somebody else. Batman's Christian.
Perfect. This is the perfect opportunity for you to actually come in and say the things that you want to say. Yeah. This is a learning environment.
This is an open hangout.
This is what to learn.
This channel, the Great Debate Community channel, is open for people to come. That's what it does. And by the way, I can tell you right now, Tina is not me. Tina is Tina. She is a hairstylist. I will cut you. She is a hairstylist. We talk about hair. She knows about that shit. Okay. It's weird when I see people go, like Tina's Steve's alt or something, or Tina's Kim, or Tina's Lori, or Tina. It's like, no, I need none of those fucking people. She's fucking Tina. I have conversations with her. She's an admin of a group that I'm in, which, by the way, has nothing to do with Teen Mom. That narrative is really weird. Steve's been hanging out with Teen Mom people. Really? What the fuck do I know about Teen Mom? I still don't know who the fuck this Janelle Evans person is. I see her come up on my Twitter so often. People have been like, and I'm like, who the hell is this? I don't even know who the hell she is.
Even if you were, why does anyone care?
I wouldn't care. Right. I said the same thing. I'm like, so what? I watch a lot of shows, right? I mean, I binge watch. Right now I'm binge watching 9/11 Lone Star, but I also watched the first 2 seasons of 9/11. I watch Chicago Med. There's other shows I do watch. I don't watch Teen Mom. I don't watch anything related to Teen Mom. Never seen a single fucking episode. So anybody who says Steve's involved in this Teen Mom crowd, guess what? They're lying to you. Like 100%, not distorting the truth, 100% lying, because I don't hang out with any Teen Mom people that I'm aware of. I don't even know who that would be. And I don't even know what that is. I've heard the phrase used related to something. Was it Was it Teen Mom or 16 and Pregnant? One of them was first. I mean, something about they get teenage girls and they tell them their stories or something and their relationships.
Oh God, I
That's
think
all I
I'm
know
gonna-
about it. Again, I mean, I never watched a single episode, so I'm probably not doing it justice. So.
Well, I think I know what the issue is with that and why people say basically whatever they want about you and put your name in their streams. And that is because I guess that they get very little pushback for doing so.
Oh, virtue signaling to their cronies that all hate Steve. Okay, yeah, no,
Well,
sure, I believe that. Yeah.
We're not a cult. We don't see somebody insulting Steve and immediately grab pitchforks.
Yeah. Oh, see, Tina says yes. It's all because Ashley Siren started our group, which she did for one day and then she left. I don't know who Ashley Siren is. I reached out to her on Instagram because somebody said reach out to her. I don't know what shows she's on. I don't know if she's been pregnant. I don't know who she's fucking. I don't know who she's married to. I don't know anything about the woman. All I know is she started a group. She left that day. I became admin. I gave it to Tina. That's it. That's my entire story. That's it. I mean, I'm still an admin now back in the group, but the group has nothing to do with Teen Mom.
Yeah, I could tell you if I tried to watch that show, I'd probably suddenly have a craving for every doorknob in the vicinity.
Yeah. I'm not interested in those kind of shows. And, and by the way, when I first saw like the show like Toddlers and Tiara, I said, is this a sick joke? I really did. I did not seriously think this was a real show.
I don't think anybody did.
Yeah, okay, Tina. Yeah, Tina told me to reach out to her. Okay, yeah. But I didn't know who she was. I still really don't know who she is. But Tina, does that group without a freaking clue have anything to do with Teen Mom? I've never seen a post about Teen Mom in that group ever. So, I mean, these people are like saying Steve's in some Teen Mom group. Really prove it, because I've never talked about Teen Mom in that group because I don't know fuck all about Teen Mom. It's not a Teen Mom group.
Even so, like I asked before,
it's not even about reality TV.
Let's assume they made the case. Who cares?
I have no idea why that'd be detrimental either, like I said. But I still like things to be factual, right? It is not the case that I'm in a Teen Mom group or have anything to do with Teen Mom.
So strange.
And if it was, I'd be like, sure, okay, your problem? Like, people criticize me for helping Lily Jean.
Oh,
and I'm like, yeah, I help Lily Jean. I stand by Lily Jean. I think she's been eviscerated for 3 years unfairly. And I think people have jumped on the bandwagon because it's cool to pick on somebody who can't really defend themselves for 3 years because their people are just psychopathic bullies out there that think it's cool to kind of hate on people. Okay, I'm not one of those people. I stand by that. I'm proud of the fact that I try to help out people like Lily Jean and other people. And people will shit on me for it. Okay, you're a shitty human being who thinks it's okay to bully people when they're 15. Great. I'm not. You
know. In the YouTube chat.
By the way, Perfect left the chat.
Well, good riddance. Anyway, she mentioned someone called KJ related to this. If you presumably would know who that is.
Of course. Yes, Katie Joy. Dumb Fuck of the Year last year. Or voted for Dumb Fuck of the Year last year. I'm in the running. Yes. Close. Yeah, but what does that have to do with Teen Mom?
Did she have some involvement in that?
I think she used, if I'm not mistaken, I think she used to do commentary on Teen Mom, but I don't know what she was talking about with Teen Mom. She's talking about the Duggars now or something, right? And I remember vaguely about Josh Duggar. I remember that name. But people have been messaging about like this Duggar and that Duggar, and I'm like, I don't know any of these people. I don't watch any of these shows.
I vaguely remember there was some kind of sex scandal involving someone named Duggar.
Something like he was touching his siblings when he was growing up or something.
Sounds about right.
Yeah,
but I don't remember much because
9 and counting, 10 and counting, 13 and counting, 25 grandkids.
Oh, right,
counting.
that family where it's like, why do you keep doing this to yourself?
Again, I never watched a single episode. I mean, that's not the type of shows I watch. I watch shows like The Good Doctor, Chicago Med, Killjoys. I like Blacklist, those kind of shows. I mean, so I don't watch any of the reality TV shows.
I've been having a hard time finding shows that are of the ilk I would enjoy.
What's your ilk? I'm really good at this. We'll just keep this going for a while. It has nothing to do with the topic any longer. So if you guys were interested about the philosophy shit, go away now. We're talking about stuff. So what kind of genre
it depends on the genre. I am a huge anime fan in general, but I've been kind of disgusted by what Japan has been producing in the last 5 years.
Okay, I can't help you with that genre. I just know Inuyasha.
Yeah.
Good go.
Yeah.
Shards,
Ugh.
Kagome,
Anime.
Inuyasha. Yeah, I don't do anime.
You know the sad part about that is the person behind that series actually had a really good romance show as like her first breakthrough in the 80s, and she just failed everything afterward, has never come to a
Wow.
conclusion.
Well, ask me.
Yeah.
I mean, like, what kind of shows you like drama, comedy, ones that make you deep thinking, ones that are just gumball. I watch a lot of TV in the middle of the night because I can't sleep very well, and so even when I'm doing my blog, I'm watching something. When I'm
I used to really
something,
like
I'm usually watching my
well,
monitor with something.
I used to really enjoy well-made shark and nature documentaries, but Shark Week is kind of ruined me on shark shows because everything focuses on people getting mauled by
Yeah.
sharks.
Yeah, those aren't the kind of shows I binge watch. Like, for example, I'll give you some recommendations of shows to watch if you haven't watched them. Like, for example, have you watched Good Girls?
Not yet.
So good, so good. See, I try binge watching that. It's really good. It's more
Orphan
bubblegum.
Black is really good.
What Orphan Black is really good. Although I haven't watched the last season, I don't think.
You need to watch the last season.
I got to the point where the clones were basically
No spoilers for other people.
okay, but well, that's like season 2.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got to finish that season. I did like Orphan Black, yes, and I also liked Orange is the New Black. Thought that was great.
Good show. Yep.
Yeah, I used to be really into a lot of sci-fi shows. Like
Black Mirror?
SG-1 was like the one I
SG-1's good. But have you watched
Oh,
Black-
that was my show growing up.
watch Black Mirror.
the old versions of Star Trek. You know, the new ones kind of left me cold.
Somebody mentions Ozark. I will be watching Ozark. I haven't watched it yet. It's on my bucket list. But I know about Ozark. Yeah, that was on Netflix. I will be binge watch that. People have recommended that to me. So, yeah.
I learned more science watching SG-1 growing up than I did in my science class.
That doesn't surprise me.
Wormholes.
It's kind of hard to pick out what the valid science is from where the BS is coming in, but it's fun to try.
The New Pope and the Trial of Christine Keeler. I don't. That sounds familiar. Those series.
I used to be into the police dramas, but they became kind of samey after a while.
It's funny you mentioned that. I'm gonna do a hangout. I have a notepad of. I have a notepad of all the different similar plots between all these different medical shows and police shows. There's every one of them at some point has done a show on this particular topic. It's like cookie cutter, and I wrote them all down. I got more that I got to add to it, but it's just so funny because it's like every one of them has dealt with this particular topic.
That's funny. There was a show called Lie to Me on Fox for a while.
I like Lie to Me.
Like it failed. I guess they had the wrong demographic or wrong time slot or something. Like the Fox audience probably couldn't understand the show.
Yeah, no, I like Lie to Me. Yeah, that was a good show.
I like how in the second season they actually stopped trying to teach you anything.
Yeah.
And that's how I knew it was
desperately
going to go.
they were desperately trying to reach to the audience of the network, and it wasn't going anywhere.
Yeah, sometimes it's hit or miss. I mean, like look what happened to Firefly, right? The greatest series of all time, and got canceled by
There's
Fox.
a number of shows that have been
Really
like
fucked that show from the get-go.
Sure. Hey, there's a rule of thumb. It's a show I like, it's going to get canceled.
Yeah, that's a good chance for me too. I was actually surprised SG-1 survived as long as it did. I guess it was a benefit of what the network staff was like at the time.
Yeah, and I like the way they ended it. I thought the ending of the last one was like...
What happened to sci-fi recently is kind of an abysmal thing. Like, they changed the spelling of it, but kept the phonetics the same, as if that's like, oh, you're going to lie. Like, oh, it's S-Y-F-Y. It's totally not science fiction, guys.
The Orville.
Really?
That's the Orville is the only one that keeps that spirit alive.
Yeah, no, I'm just sitting here like, couldn't you have just changed the channel's name? Because if you're not going to keep to the spirit, it's pointless.
Oh, the Sci-Fi Channel's ridiculous.
Yeah, but it's all about branding.
Like, look at the History Channel.
Yeah.
You know, being easy to find and...
Well, they're trying to build off of branding, but in the process of what they've been doing to the channel, they're basically destroying that brand. So it kind of defeats the point of building off of the brand.
I got to rewatch Banshee. I watched the first season. I thought Banshee was pretty good, but it's been so long since I've watched Banshee that I probably have to watch it from the beginning again to remember.
Yes, for a while I was kind of confused as to why a lot of the formerly educational channels all started running bullshit. Supposedly, a while ago, the same conglomerate that owns Fox picked up like the History Channel and Discovery and a couple other networks like that, which is part of the reason that they've stopped focusing on proper science and they're just going for ratings.
Yeah, I think they went to shit.
What's
Yeah.
not educational about ice road truckers?
Whoa, ancient aliens, baby.
At least that is like a thing that actually exists, as opposed to like the weird mermaid mockumentary drama thing that they did. Like
Yeah, that. Oh,
that was insulting to the intelligence. It was like, really,
How about the
Like,
what's
the
one-
megalodon one?
How about the ones where they're ice fishing for snow crab kind of thing?
Oh yeah, I mean, again, it's kind
Dilly
of over dramatized, but at
Yeah,
least
yeah,
it's
dilly
a thing that
sketch.
exists. Like a lot of the other shit they're putting on there is like, just why? Or the guy on History Channel that has like the space aliens thing with the fucking pyramids.
I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's aliens.
So yeah, a lot of the channels I grew up enjoying have been totally boned.
Well, this is why I binge watch. Like I said, I mean, like Good Omens. Have you ever guys seen Good Omens? Very, very good. Go watch. If you want something like a little bit of philosophy, a little bit of like God and Satan and all that kind of angels, demon shit, go watch Good Omens. It is really brilliant.
I was enjoying Lucifer. I think that was a Netflix one.
Lucifer is one of the best shows ever. Season 5 is on hiatus a little bit because of the whole CV-19 thing.
Yeah.
But they are coming out with season 5. It should probably be postponed to like end of 2021 or beginning.
So
2022.
it's supposedly the last season. They've
it's gonna be
already
a while.
planned it to be.
Yeah.
But like something I didn't realize when I first started watching it is he's from the same universe as the other Marvel characters.
Yeah, he's in
Or
the
is it
same universe as Constantine.
John Constantine, right? And I didn't realize it was that Lucifer at first until I started watching the show. I'm like, right, that was the nightclub thing, right?
Yeah.
But they still haven't referenced Constantine. So was there a rights ownership issue?
No, they had a crossover where Constantine went to go to Lucifer for a favor at the nightclub, and he needed a pass to get into purgatory, and so Lucifer gave him a special card, like a playing card, that he could go to purgatory with it. So they did a crossover event. Now, it didn't appear they were in the same studio though. It looked like they was kind of like different studio. You know how they do like this person, that person. I don't think you really ever saw them together, but I don't remember specifically. But I remember that there was a crossover event. Yeah.
So far, if I remember correctly, Constantine's only been in movies. Like, I don't think they've had a TV series, at least not a modern one, where he was starring.
No, he had his own show. John Constantine had his own Constantine show. It only lasted one season, though.
That's why I don't know about it.
Yeah,
That sucks.
it was good. It was really good.
Yeah, no, he's one of my favorite characters that I only rediscovered the existence of like 5 or 6 years ago. I went back and looked through the logs and annals of like all the weird shit he's been involved in.
Yeah, I don't know if Good Omens is going to have a second season. I don't remember whether they said there was. I don't think there is a second season of Good Omens. But David Tennant was brilliant in that series. That's the kind of show that I like because it really makes you think. It's like, this is great. You know, 'cause you don't know what the fuck's going on.
I just don't like anything he's in.
Oh,
I can't stand Doctor Who.
Yeah. I'm sort of halfway between enjoying high fantasy and sci-fi as long as the stories have a basis and they don't randomly throw in love subplots just because.
or SJW subplots like last season of Doctor Who did. Oh God, that was so over the top.
Yeah, I don't necessarily mind. It depends on how they handle it. If it ends up being like beating it over your head and trying to, make your cognitive faculties fail, then I have a problem with it.
All right, let's do this because I got to wrap it up because I've got to eat. I am really hungry and this has been very long. 3 hours, at $5 an hour. Okay, so let's do this. How really? Well, now it's less because it's been 3 hours now.
Yeah.
So let's leave the audience with some recommendation. Neil Gaiman's a hell of a writer, but let's leave them with some recommendation of a series. So go ahead and who else is like? I'll give mine at the very end.
I would suggest if anybody out there has not seen it, I really like Better Call Saul.
Better Call Saul.
And if you have not seen Breaking Bad, then watch that instead, and then watch Better Call Saul or Mr. Robot.
I loved Breaking Bad. I did, yeah, brilliant series. Better Call Saul. I never got past the first 6 episodes.
I think people have been arguing whether or not Better Call Saul is the better show, and I'm not sure what to say about that.
Should I finish the series? I mean, should I start over again? Because I couldn't get into it, and I loved Breaking Bad.
I love it.
Okay.
Especially how the last season ended. I refuse to even watch any episodes until this entire season concludes, and then I'm just gonna binge the whole thing. I have them all on my hard drive, just waiting to be watched.
Kibamaki says American Gods. Absolutely. That series is freaking amazing.
If you're into like less mature stuff, like stuff that kids might watch, if you happen to enjoy Avatar or The Legend of Korra, there's a thing on Netflix, something like The Dragon Prince. It's got a very similar flavor to those, and I've been enjoying it.
Star Wars Rebels is pretty good too.
I love Star Wars Rebels.
Mikey says Fender Play has given away 3 free months membership. I don't know what Fender Play is. I just downloaded something from one of these game sites that was giving away a game, War Dogs, and it doesn't work on my computer for some reason. I'm really disappointed. I wanted to try it.
Oh. Sort of a non-TV recommendation. If any of your fan base grew up watching and enjoying Dragon Ball, definitely watch Team 4 Stars Abridged series. It's hilarious.
Oh yeah,
What's it called?
It is. It's wonderful. Team 4 started an abridged series of Dragon Ball Z, and it's like a comedy. They redubbed it. It's very low quality and lowbrow at the start, but by the end, it is like just as good production wise as the actual show, and it is wonderful.
Yeah. Understanding a lot of the jokes kind of requires meta knowledge of the series, so if you're not a fan, it won't make much sense. But if you are a fan, it's hilarious.
I prefer the abridged Cell series to the actual original.
Oh God, yes, the send off was glorious.
All right. Well, write those down and check those out. I'm gonna give you guys my recommendation. It's a series. It's been on a while. It's very I'll tell you what. I'll describe it, and then somebody could yell out what it is. It's a similar. If you had Harry Potter and Chronicles of Narnia had a love child.
Oh boy, that sounds cool.
Anybody?
What was it called?
Well, I haven't named it yet, but if you had to describe it, it'd be like Harry Potter and Chronicles of Narnia got together and had a love child.
Boy.
Oh, is it that Black Mirror?
Nope.
Dark Mirror or something?
Nope. It's a show called The Magicians.
Shit.
If you guys haven't watched The Magicians yet, it is fucking outstanding. Brilliant writing. Every season's good. And by the way, it is not. It is not safe for work. It's safe for work kind of thing, but it's not like it's nudity. But it's powerful. It's a powerful fucking show.
So you said it's like a combination of Harry Potter and Narnia.
Yeah.
But what if you can't stand Harry Potter and would like it to burn in hellfire?
Well, don't watch it. I don't know. You might be surprised. I mean, like I said. Yeah, watch The Magicians.
It's possible the reason you didn't like Harry Potter had more to do with the author's way of writing than the world building.
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of Harry Potter either, but whatever. But so do me a favor. So I'm going to end this. Watch the series as the people mentioned. Also, The Magicians. Mention in the comments section whether you like these things or not. What you thought. Like watch the pilot, right? You don't have to watch all of them, but go. Yeah, this pilot seems like it'd be something that I can get into.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some guy named Les Wrong also did a fan fiction called Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality, which I thought was kind of hilarious.
That sounds interesting. All right, guys. I appreciate this. It was a very long stream. Didn't expect to go that long, but I appreciate X coming in even though his phone died. But I'm going to be doing more of these kinds of conversations. Excuse me. With Young Earth Creationists and street epistemology and all that kind of stuff. Keep us entertained because, hey, we're all stuck in the same boat here. We're all home bound. It sucks. What are we going to do?
Well, you got to expect it to go long when you're with Mr. Serious.
Yeah. If you're going to have a post-stream chat, I could stick around and talk about the virus from a biomedical point of view if anyone cares.
Well, we're going to... were you in the ACA the other day talking about that?
No. I'm not even sure if I'm a member of that, unless it was on Facebook.
Oh. Yeah, one of these days I want to have a virologist come on and maybe talk about the binding sites and what they're going to be doing to try to have an immunization for the whatever enzyme they're working on. The protein receptors on the binding site. They're trying to attack a specific one of them, and hopefully that will correct the problem, so it doesn't attach to the cells. But it's like, do you think that because of this, it might actually one day work on the common cold because coronavirus is,
Yeah, from what my friend that went to the same graduate school as we were talking about it the other day. It appears that coronaviruses have a relationship with the rhinoviruses. So if we do develop a method that works for one,
the rhinovirus.
It might work for the other as well.
Yeah.
Yes,
that's what I've heard as well. So, so you think there's been an incentive to get them working on it?
I mean, if it works and we get something functional, then it would be less difficult to use that as a starting point, I would think.
Is that what they're doing? They're trying to attack one of the binding sites, right?
That's what I'd heard. It was one of the methods in play.
ACE2 I think it's the ACE2 binding site.
I don't remember the name of the gene because I've been sort of disengaged. I don't work on that virology, so it's not really my field of expertise.
Gotcha. All right, guys. Like I said, I'm gonna go eat, and probably I'm gonna watch the last. I gotta catch up on my magicians. New episode just came out a minute ago, so that's why I recommend it because I want to watch it. All right, guys. Peace
Makes
out.
sense.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Wave good night.
Nice.
They can't see you, but that's okay.
Bye, everybody.
Yep.
Try devs.